What's happening, everybody? Welcome to the lab. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz. We got a great show for you tonight. A couple people that you might be familiar with. However, we're waiting on one. He'll get here when he gets here, and he's probably making some sort of ridiculous coffee concoction or eating Chinese food.
He's making a Luigi Mangione.
he has the, because he's Italian, he has that very Mangione type thing. But so I see the death penalty was taken off the table for him, but fantastic. But Chris, good to see you. How are you?
I am doing great, Josh. How are you, buddy? You look great.
Thank you. I'm doing well. I feel good, and everything's been good, and dogs are well, grandma's doing fine, family's doing good, kids. So,
you're living the good life. God's blessing you.
Yeah.
There's nothing to complain about. Tomorrow's still going to show up.
It shows up every time. And it's a wonderful thing that, that I've been, I'm very blessed. I don't take that for granted. Not that there aren't downfalls and there, pitfalls in life, but, you solve one problem and then another problem comes along eventually, and you just kind of have to enjoy the time in between as well. And so, that's sort of where I'm at, but, you look great, and I love your background back there.
It's coming together, man. It's coming together. Thank you so much. Aloha lab rats, aloha friends, family, and fugitives, who's ever in the chat.
Fugitives. We got some fugitives.
I introduced myself as when people go, you look familiar. And I said, yeah, it's usually the post office up on the wall. I get a lot of people that, and then I tell them not to, snitch me off that the feds are looking for me. So
right. You've been on the run for quite some time.
So I am positive Gary is doing one of two things.
Okay. Let's explore that.
I think he's playing a piano song, maybe.
Yeah.
Uploading it.
Yeah.
Having people hit the tip jar. Or two. Okay.
Yeah.
He's making a Luigi Mangione.
A Mangione pizza.
Something. Oh, I see the butt.
There he is.
I was not floating a song for a tip, and I was not making a Luigi.
There he is.
I was on the news.
Oh,
yeah. He's
been on the news for many things. Chris, can't wait to hear that.
Do you think it's terrible that? Oh wait, are we in the show?
Yes, the show is running.
Okay, I wasn't
waiting for you. We're talking about you.
Oh, okay. Well, that's hilarious. Well, I wasn't. I heard you. That's why I'm laughing. But no. I was doing an interview for a news.
Cool.
So, yeah.
But you guys, go ahead, Josh. This is your show.
No, it's not. It's everybody's.
Yeah, and speaking, and thank you for mentioning that I do the piano music. People have been very sweet. I can't say I'm breaking the bank, but it's nice to people are sweet. They send coffee.
Well, you were very talented, because that's kind of in your background growing up, right? I mean, you were kind of a pianist.
Well, I played piano from when I was 4. I thought for a long time that's what I wanted, was going to do with my life. But so I've always been interested in people that have these weird, kind of artistic qualities when they're little kids, But I was always very interested in that. But it's a nice outlet for to do something where you're not thinking all the time about this awful stuff that we deal with, and that's why I think it's nice that people get to see that you're not talking about miserable things 24/7, right? You can also make music and have positive messages and spirituality and all that. And there's a kind of I really like that it means something to people. So it's a nice way to connect to people. So, but so how are you guys doing? There's a lot going on in the news.
Crazy.
Yeah, but I'm doing well. We were just talking a little bit about the Luigi Mangione update, and and then you have that horrible case out of Ohio with the vascular surgeon, accused of murdering, which is a
and bizarre bizarre things that people are putting together about the summer wells. Like these stories are just peculiar that are coming, that people patch together. I don't know what they mean, but listen, I'm open to anything. But
and then there's a new spin on Kohberger today with a second suspect.
Well, I don't think there was a second suspect, but that's, people have different opinions on it. But the best part of the Mangione story, in my opinion, because you cannot make this stuff up. The best part is the story of the guy who takes the pizza cutter and shows up and says he's with the FBI with a letter that says, like, let this guy out.
Oh, he's the sharpest tool in the shed.
That's my favorite. He comes from Minnesota. Right? Comes from Minnesota with the idea being he's basically going to walk in there and be like, it's like that bounty hunter in Return of the Jedi. Like, yeah, I'm here to take Han Solo. Well, let's go. Just shows up. And you saw that, right, Chris? Wasn't it hilarious?
Oh, yeah. You can't make this stuff up. I mean,
he had been like let go from some kind of pizzeria job. So he has like pizza tools and like this is.
Well, first of all, he's being escorted by the United States Marshals, task force SWAT teams, right? And, the guys in the jackets, they're just for show. Okay. It's the guys around them and behind them and in front of them with the MP5s and all the helmets with the radios and all that stuff and blah, blah, blah. Can you imagine what those guys are thinking? Okay, so let me get this right. Yeah. You brought a pizza cutter.
The Metropolitan, where Maduro is, by the way. Right.
Okay. And you want to take him with you because you're with the FBI, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Sure, he looked like he was with the FBI.
Yeah. Can you come on over here, Frank? Let's have a conversation.
Well, what I don't get.
It's hilarious.
What, Josh?
What I don't get is like, why would you want a sharp object around that guy? Like, why would you want to be alone with a sharp object around Bryan Kohberger? And
you mean Luigi Mangione?
Oh, excuse me, Luigi. Yeah, or a weapon of any kind, and don't bring up health insurance around the guy because he'll have a conniption fit. That guy. I mean, that was one of the craziest stories. I mean,
you can't make it up. I was dying when I sent it to you guys that night. I was like, I can't believe this development. This is shocking.
It's the guy. Remember, Jim Gaffigan says, "Well, we got to get the fork." Or for the wedding gift, the last wedding gift. We're going to be the fork guy.
Right, exactly.
You don't want to be the fork people.
But listen to this. I mean, this is one of these summaries that sounds like one of those things Jay Leno used to read, like those ridiculous news reports that you can't believe they're real. But it says, just listen, Mark Anderson, 35, this is NBC News, was arrested at the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn late Wednesday after prison workers asked to see his credentials, and he produced a Minnesota's driver's license, claimed to be in possession of weapons, according to a complaint filed in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of New York. Anderson also claimed he was an FBI agent in possession of paperwork signed by a judge authorizing the release of a specific inmate, the complaint says. And the court document does not name the inmate.
Sounds legit.
So it's a free-for-all, like a get out of jail free card for Monopoly or something with that little guy on it, uncle, grandpa, whatever his name is, Moneybag.
We're here for Kitty.
And then it says Anderson also displayed and threw at Bureau of Prisons officers numerous documents, the complaint says. They appear to be related to filing claims against the United States Department of Justice. In his backpack, BOP workers found a barbecue fork and a round steel blade that resembled a pizza cutter. Anderson had traveled to New York from Minnesota for a job opportunity. It didn't work out, and he had been working at a pizzeria, the law enforcement source said. Anderson was ordered detained Thursday after a magistrate judge found that he posed a flight risk. A spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney General for the Eastern District of New York said.
If the pizzeria ends up being named Luigi's, I'm out of here.
That took the cake. I mean, that took the pie, so to speak.
What, do you have a jetpack? I mean, what's he going to fly away with?
Yeah,
and on an electric bike as well.
Yeah,
the FBI.
That to me took the cake as weirdest true crime story of the week.
And one of the big clues of that it wasn't legit is that it was written on a napkin. I'm just kidding. It wasn't.
Well, can you imagine throwing them? My favorite is that it supposedly comes from a judge and it doesn't even have the name of the person on
Yeah. Judge Doe.
it. Like it could have been Maduro. He was there
Yeah.
for it. Here, let's go. Let's take him home. We're going home to
We're here for Maduro.
That's
we're here for Epstein. He was too,
What's that?
So, he was there at Metropolitan. Same place.
Oh, yeah.
People don't realize that. That's the same place Epstein took his life.
Yeah. I remember.
Metropolitan Detention. Wasn't that the same place? Yeah.
I think it is.
So that was a weird story. The sort of speculation about what went on with Summer Wells, that's interesting. It's worth thinking about, because it's so, out there in some ways. But then this stuff about Kohberger, I mean, we could pick at this all night. But I refuse to go down that there was two attackers. I just cannot. I can't go down that path.
Well, look, don't you think that if there were two attackers, that Kohberger might have mentioned that at some point?
Well, he did ask if someone else was arrested.
I remember that, and I was actually going to bring that up. But I mean, what do you think the reason was that he asked that?
I think he was trying to throw.
That's what I think too. I don't think there was anything to it.
Oh, I was trying to remember who the person is in the audience who had a name that was a reference to Frasier, and now I see them there. That's a line from Frasier. She said Jejune. That's my favorite show. But anyway, so I think that it's as simple as this in my mind. If this guy could form an alliance with another human being, he wouldn't have had to commit this crime. It's as simple as that. This is a loner. If he was not a loner, this crime would not have happened. The idea of him forming an alliance with a similar-minded person would mean that he had a friend. That doesn't make sense. It's like one of those, it doesn't pass the smell test. Can you picture this guy having a criminal collaboration with a buddy?
No, absolutely not.
I can't picture him having a conversation.
Yeah, well, that's another thing, is that he's, but described by everybody, just a socially inept, awkward, just, everything about him is odd. And, these autopsy reports that were released are absolutely brutal. They're probably worse than you could imagine. We'll talk about it a little bit, and also sort of the families, again, being blindsided by another information dump. They're not even tipped off. I don't understand that. I don't understand, what is the harm in, sending a phone call, say, hey, I just want you to know that this is coming, or and again,
I suppose you worry that the family might get the jump on the story. The family might go out and say it before you do as a reporting agency, because in the final analysis, this is business for people. I think it's gross, but that's what they think of it. I'm sure but
I'm not saying that they
depressing. I hate it, but
are to get, that they're given the details of it. Just that there's an information dump coming. And
that would be decent, but I'm saying that people may worry that then the family may call up a news agency and say, do you believe this thing that's about to come out? And it hasn't even been released. But I'll tell you, in the interview that I just did, it hasn't been released yet, I'll say that I made an observation that just sort of came out of my head, but I think it's interesting to think about, and I haven't heard it anywhere else, is that if you look at the numbers of wounds on the victims, in order of how it appears the victims died, they increase exponentially through the three females. And what I think is that it suggests a gradual unraveling of control. You're trying to regain control of a situation that did not go as planned. So more and more and more violence is asserted. And Chris, I've heard you say that you thought this became a disorganized scene as it went on. And I think consistent with that, you start with the number of injuries that Maddie has, and then you go to Kaylee's, which are worse and more intense, and then you go to Xana, who's injured the most. And I think what you can see is this gradual explosion of violence that's getting messier and messier and messier. And Chris, I think we're on the same page about that. This was a guy who felt very mechanical and controlled, went in there thinking it was going to go like according to a blueprint. Everything went totally sideways, and you see this exponentially increasing violence as he tries to regain control. It then raises the question, after the 3 females are deceased, why kill the male who's sort of knocked out on the bed? What's that about, unless you're just mad that a male was there, or you want to feel like you're in control again? I don't know. But I think that ultimately you want to look at the number of wounds to get a sense of his chaos as it progressed. Chris, I wanted to know if you agree with that. That's what it looks like.
You know, I looked at every photograph.
Yeah.
You know, out there. Josh just sent me a text about a picture I just sent him, and you can share it with Gary.
Okay.
Send it to Gary, because I maybe when you get a chance.
Yeah, that's too funny.
Anyway, I looked at every single photograph, and you know, one of the things I made a promise that I wasn't going to show any of the photographs, and I'm not going to show any photographs on
I'm not either
on my channel. But it was clear to me with my experience that when he got upstairs, you know, the first thing he did was he attacked Maddie first.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
And that he also straddled both girls simultaneously. And that when Kaylee woke up, Maddie was already pretty much out of it. And that's the brutality that we see with her, because there was a lot of evidence that, you know, you got hair hitting the wall, you've got cast off going everywhere. In one of the pictures, you can actually see the hair and the blood. And he simultaneously is using the knife, but also he's using the butt of the knife. And you can see a couple of those.
I think so too.
And points as well. I think while that's happening, Xana actually makes it into the room. Now, she, based on the evidence about her, I think it's possible she may have even tried to intervene and save Kaylee and Maddie. Because Bryan
interrupted him, in other words.
Yeah.
So you think that's why he drops the sheath?
I think, well, yes. And I think during that confusion, because Kaylee was kicking extensively back at him. And I think that's when the sheath dislodged. And that's how it ended up in that crazy position, because his attention was no longer on Kaylee, but it was now transferred onto Xana, who started to run down the hallway. And we see evidence down the hallway that there was transfer. Whoop, where'd Gary go? Snowstorm.
Oh, there he is.
I'm here. We actually, there's no snowstorm now, just a lot of leftover. But so this is from the Daily Mail.
Yeah, this is from the Daily Mail. So this is the autopsy report, and I have just sort of the cliff notes of them. But so go ahead, Chris.
Well, Kohberger is going after Xana, and that's where you get the cast off in the stairwell wall, the upper wall. That's where you get the transfer along the stairwell railing. And he catches up with her, and the first thing he does, and this is one of the things that I don't think anybody's seen in those photographs, but I clearly saw it. I think he had gotten to her right at the door, because there is her blood is on the door frame coming into the room, and it's headed into the room. So there's cast off from her with blood as she's running into the room. And my theory is he gets up to her and pushes her, probably with the knife. And you'll see one between the nightstand and the bed frame. There is an indentation on the wall. Okay. And that's one of two things. It's either the butt of the knife or it's from her head.
Oh,
And I think he pushed her into the wall, started to stab her. Ethan wakes up because there is no blood under his right arm or his right side of his body. He basically, I'm going to demonstrate. This is what I believe happened, where he's against the wall like this. Okay. Well, it's going to be like this. He's sleeping against the wall. His right side is against the wall. She is to the left of him now, between the bed frame and the nightstand, that white nightstand. She's starting to bleed out. And Ethan leans up on his right elbow and turns towards Kohberger. And Kohberger, in a single shot, boom, hits him right here. And it cuts the aorta and it cuts the jugular instantaneously. Ethan was gone within 6 seconds, maybe 7. And what that looks like, give everybody an idea, it's the same shot that Charlie Kirk took. The amount of blood flow that immediately came out of Charlie Kirk, in my opinion, came out of Ethan. He was done with that first shot, meaning the stab wound.
mm-hmm.
It was at that moment he refocused on Xana. And I believe he straddled her, trapping her to the ground, because all the evidence is high velocity at a very low pitch against the wall, against the chair. And that chair is her trying to somehow get up, and she's rolling over and she's trying to stand up.
Right.
And that's where you're getting the blood underneath her feet, because she's moving and she's trying to fight him at every piece of the puzzle here. And at some point, she tried to get to Ethan as well. And that's where we get the transfer of her blood and his blood, collectively on each other. And I think even on his hands, which is not unusual. This is not unusual for this type of problem. And once he's on top of her, that's when he goes to town. Right. And that's where all of these incisions. See, he took 6 wounds, 1 stab wound to the upper chest, cutting the jugular, like I just said. The subclavian vein, which is right next to the jugular and the subclavical artery. All of that network is right here on the neck, right here.
Right.
Okay. And all of that network, he was able to go after it. In fact, let me see if I got a picture here.
Sounds similar to the way that an animal kills a victim, with the straddling and the attacking the carotid or the face, the head, to rapidly eliminate with the sharp teeth or claws. But it has that quality of a primitive animal that would, like a lion or a tiger or so forth, that hunts and then pins and goes for that sort of neck or above area. It's interesting. I mean, I'm sure that's not
Well,
intentional.
it
as
presented
psychology.
itself
Yeah.
to him. I think he got lucky with that top one. Josh, I just sent you a photo
Okay.
on your text message,
Mm-hmm.
and to show the audience so that they get a better idea on the anatomy of this thing.
But
And
the
this,
first
and
time,
this is why Ethan was out so fast. Go ahead.
yeah, a lot of
He also had a BA that was very high, and he also had amphetamine in his system. Both of those are in the autopsy report.
I'm trying to understand the comment
There it is.
that someone says a lot of B words, Dr. Gary. I don't know what that means. I really don't. Does anyone understand that comment?
I didn't even see it.
A lot of B words, Dr. Gary. I honestly have no idea what that means. I hope the person will clarify, because I like to address things that are directed to me. But okay, so what is this a image of? Okay.
This is the left. He cuts the left artery, the subclavicle artery and vein, and hits the jugular, i.e., the carotid.
I understand what the person's saying, by the way.
He gets all three
Mhm.
in probably a slicing, chopping type of wound. Ethan also got cut underneath the legs, but probably because he was initially trying to kick. But once this artery got hit,
Yeah.
it was over. It was like, remember the reenactment that Brandon Wilson did, where he said, spurting, bleed, blah, blah, blah. Okay. That's why you have all of that coagulated blood at heavy loss trapped underneath the bed. And that what had come out of the house and folks had photographed was actually Ethan and nobody else.
Yeah.
And so that once he was out, then it was quickly Xana. Now, one of the things I am very interested in learning, and everybody has said, well, there's no way, one person could have done this. It would have taken longer. Well, people have seen the video of Charlie Kirk getting shot. He dropped in less than 0.5 seconds. It was over.
Yeah, he was probably dead before he fell down.
Absolutely. And so was Ethan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ethan got the same, just the opposite, well, it was the same side.
Yeah.
Ethan it was over for Ethan, and he rolled over. There's evidence of hair and his head hitting the wall when he collapses. And that's where all that blood coagulated underneath the bed in those photographs. And then the other stuff immediately, Bryan is after Xana.
But just go ahead, Josh.
No, go ahead, Dr. Gary.
Well, I'm going to remind you to come back to what you were just about to say. I have to say that I think, in trying to reconstruct this in my mind, and this is not to be misconstrued, because there's always somebody who misconstrues everything as a kind of victim blaming. But I think that if Xana had not come out and inspected, she probably, like the two women downstairs, would not have been killed. I believe ultimately that it was because she probably came out of the room and went to inspect that he loses control and feels the need to eliminate someone who has seen him. But I think that the whole idea is now, you might say, well, didn't the one downstairs see him? But I think it's different. Because I think at that point he's adrenally exhausted, and there's all different elements that have to figure in. But I think that in that moment of what he was doing, with the two victims upstairs, I think she probably walks in or inspects, and he flips out that this person is like an interloper into this fantasy scene. and has to be unfortunately killed. And I think the degree of fury that explodes at her is not only that she's putting up a fight, but I think that she's an object of having been caught and messed up and humiliated, and and all the things that he was trying, I think, psychologically to counter with the crime. Yeah, I mean, imagine the idea of a woman, because he obviously has some misogynistic element to this. The idea of a female ultimately walking in and seeing what you're doing, and the whole thing has gone totally different than you figure, and now she could be a witness, and everything's completely out of control. I just think he went ballistic and took it, and it all becomes focused on this poor third woman.
I just sent you another screenshot, Josh.
Yeah, but what do you think about that idea, Chris? That she's sort of like, she came into it, and I think that was not planned in any way, and it got him out of control.
Yeah, and I agree with that. He was engaged 1,000% on Maddie and Kaylee,
right?
And she heard something going on.
And she was a hero, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Hero. Absolutely. So don't, I mean, because it took bravery to go out of that room.
I think, and I said this recently, even on my channel, I said, my thought process was Kaylee, Maddie, and Xana solve this crime. And if you look in this right here, Ethan Chapin's autopsy, look at number 7, roll up, Josh. Oops, sorry. I don't think you can roll it up.
That's a good way to put it, Chris.
No, the other way. The other one, the bottom one.
Got it.
They're amphetamine level 260 nanograms. So he had some type of stimulant in his system, but look at his blood, his BA, 0.12. He's well past the drunk phase here. And so this is what they call a synergistic effect. You have an amphetamine pulling one way, you have alcohol pulling another way, and they call it a synergistic effect. And so you've got one or two, and so he had more alcohol in his system than he had amphetamine in his system. Now, amphetamine can be a lot of things. It doesn't mean methamphetamine. It could be, NyQuil. It can be a lot of different things, that have a stimulant quality to it. It could be, used for.
It was probably Adderall.
I don't think Adderall's an amphetamine.
It's a stimulant.
Is it a stimulant?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, well then that could possibly be as well.
And it's very, and when I say this, I mean this, very, very popular amongst college students everywhere.
Okay, yeah, but right, and so I guess I need to clarify that, and this just means his system was going both ways.
Sure, right.
But the alcohol overruled, and that's why he was asleep. And he was passed out. She was awake. The two girls upstairs were definitely passed out. Kaylee didn't even know what hit her. Maddie didn't know what hit her because they were both under the blankets, sound asleep. And I think Xana heard it and ran upstairs.
Right. Heroically.
I'm sorry?
Heroically. Because I don't know too many people that would do that.
Well, right. But I think there was also curiosity, too. What the heck's going on up here?
But it must have been terrifying.
Well, of course. When the first thing you see is this zombie coming at you.
Yeah.
And that's where you get the transfers when he leaves the room. Now, this is why I have been so fired up about why they missed the car.
You think there was blood evidence in there?
I know there was. My years of 13 years in homicide, I can tell you there's blood evidence in that car. And the fact that they had that car immediately, right after, within how many days? A week?
Yeah. Yeah, but didn't he meticulously pull it apart?
They did. But,
No, but
he
he-
had over 30 something days to clean it.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
They arrested him on the 30th of December.
Mhm.
They had the car, I think, on the 19th of November.
Yeah.
That guy, remember, they arrested him with gloves going through the trash.
Yeah.
He
You
was
see
dumping
him,
his trash in his neighbor's bin.
well, I don't know about that, but they caught him in the house when the feds hit the house, and he was sitting at the kitchen table with gloves on, going through a bag of trash meticulously.
Mhm.
And we see him in the prison shot. Remember the second video? Okay. Where he's scrubbing his Crocs and putting the tissue up on top. I mean, Gary, what's that all about?
Well, I only know that there's no circumstance on this earth under which I would wear Crocs. So let me ask you a question. Never. Not, there is no chance. I'd rather be killed. Just take me out. I would never wear a Croc. So let me ask, I just can't bear them. So let me ask you a question, Chris. First of all, I want to comment on something somebody said in the audience. I think it is true that the character of Ethan doesn't seem like it's been as fleshed out as a person. I would like to know more about him as a human. I think that the comment about that, people just sort of have these ideas about it. We don't know him as well, I think, as some of the other figures in this drama that played out. And if it's just one of those things where I would just love to sit and hear his family talk about him and have him sort of come to life as a person. Because I think there is this sense that this was like a female focused crime and that he was just sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time, that kind of thing. And he gets lost. His voice gets lost. So that's one thing. But the question I have for you, Chris, is based on your experience and the type of offender that we collectively, at this point think this was, how much, when he was fantasizing, and I think he was, about doing this, how much do you think he prepared in advance to have to do cleanup? Do you think that he went in there, for example, with a change of clothes, a covering for his clothing, plastic in the car, cleaning solution? Or do you think it's just that so much time went on that he had an opportunity to tidy up? Because the truth is, this, with all these horrendous injuries, the carotid artery injury alone, I think there would have been blood on him, a lot of blood on him, shooting at him. But perhaps I'm wrong.
It's going the other way. Yeah,
so straight away from him, even
right,
in the upstairs bedroom.
Well, yes. What happens is Ethan, again, he leans up on his right elbow and he turns towards Kohberger. I think that's
Okay.
I think if you were to have a criminalist come in and do a recreation, okay, that was going to be the most logical sequence of events.
Right.
And as he leans up, Kohberger gets him right here. It's over at that point. Now he can probably just get a couple of kicks in,
Right.
kind of like, you saw Charlie Kirk just fall over. Okay. And then Kohberger may have tried to get a couple stabs in on him, and that could explain some of the injuries, to his legs. Okay.
And that could have also reflected a strange experimentation that you're doing with the person post-mortem.
Okay. But then Ethan immediately collapses towards the wall. Okay. So he gets it here and he falls this way to the wall.
I understand you.
And now the blankets are going to absorb all of that blood spatter evidence, all of that evidence of, the arterial bleeding, the jugular getting cut, all this other stuff. That's all saturated into the bed, and underneath the bed. If you look at those photos under the bed, I mean, remember, we only have 6 pints of blood, maybe 7 sometimes.
Yeah.
So all of that can come out in, literally, we saw it with Charlie Kirk. Okay. And not to use him as the example because that was a gunshot, but it's a similar type of wound. You hit that jugular and it's like turning on a fire hose. It's immediately the pressure of the heart, the pressure of the body. Every time the heart beats, you get this. Boom.
Right.
Just like that.
So,
But it's like this.
just to understand.
Think of
Right.
the adrenaline, think of all the other stuff. So it's like this.
Right. So let me, but just to understand, in the fantasizing about doing this, which, with the violent pornography and the other things that we know were on the phone, according to the Dateline episode and all that, the Celebrate stuff. Remember that? The stuff we know was there. This is the kind of person who would have fantasized about, in advance. But the question is, how much of in the fantasy of dominating and controlling or whatever is that kind of intellectual dominating where you're getting away with it, where you know how to clean everything up in such a way that you're the smartest guy in the room and no one's going to, sort of like we saw in the Zodiac Killer, for example, where you feel the need to boast that you put airplane glue in your fingers so you don't leave fingerprints, and you figured out a way to mess with the snipe, on the scope so that you get a perfect hit in the dark, exactly where you want it to go. In other words, do you think that he went in there equipped with all kinds of stuff that would have been necessary for a cleanup in this, like hanging at his side or in his hand or in a bag or in other words, what are you picturing? Because, or do you think that the blood evidence suggests that there really wasn't that much cleanup?
No, I think he went in there to your point, Gary. I think that it was fantasy based, just like we've talked about.
Psychosexual thrill,
Right.
fantasy.
I mean, you don't have that type of, stuff on your phone, the P stuff on your phone, where, it's all tied together, sleeping, all the other stuff, SA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
That's right. That's how he enters the scenario. And he's fired up into that scenario. We don't know, and I think one day he will tell us, if he anticipated both of the girls being up in the room.
Right. I doubt it. I absolutely doubt it.
Right. And he's going to have to tell us that, right, Gary? Right, Josh? Okay.
That's what it is. And I think one day he'll he won't stop.
No, yeah, it'll be
it's a matter of time.
He'll be going all day.
Mm.
Now, what we don't also know is once he was into this situation that it went sideways quickly, because all of a sudden he went in there with this sexual fantasy, and Kaylee's there. And remember, he's in Maddie's room. And all of a sudden, Kaylee's awake, and it's not going the way he had thought it through. And so the brutality instantly is to Maddie. He gets her out of the situation quickly. But Kaylee now is fighting. There is a lot.
Also a hero.
Can you put up? Let's go to Maddie for a minute, Josh.
No problem.
I think that whatever, and you remember, Chris, I said this to Kaylee's parents on your show, on the interview room. What I think he went in there to do, he never got to do because of the fight that was put up by Kaylee. I think because I cannot envision any version of this story where there was not a sexual component. And I believe that was prevented by everything going haywire. He winds up committing a quadruple murder. But I think it was supposed to be a sexualized thing, possibly with murder. You see what I'm saying? But unfortunately, it went, for everybody involved, it became even more horrible, even worse, because he lost control of the situation. There were people there that wasn't supposed to be there.
Everything on Maddie
Right.
is from here up.
Yeah.
From here up.
Right.
And she also got hit in the exact same spot that Ethan got hit in. The subclavian vein, artery, chest walls, etc.
Right.
Now, when we take this and we overlay it on Ethan, he's already seen how successful it was with Maddie.
So, an interesting comment.
So he's already figured out, okay, boom, she's out of it. I got to deal with this one here, and it's Kaylee. Look at Kaylee's wounds.
Poor Kaylee. Yep. Yep. It's all of them. I poor all of these. I mean, such beautiful people and such a.
Now, this is an interesting comment. Multiple sharp force injuries while suffering aphyxical injuries and blunt force injuries of the head. You know what I think that is? He's got his hand around her throat and he's choking her, trying to strangle her, and stabbing her 24 times in the facial region, 11 times in the chest. So that means he's straddling her. He's straddling her with his hand, probably. And I'd have to see the entire autopsy report and see the photographs. But it sounds like he's trying to choke her while simultaneously beating her either with the butt of the knife and the blade of the knife simultaneously. He's rotating. So, and a lot of times these guys can do this, okay, and then do this, and do this, okay? And there's evidence of that, of both of those, okay? And because if you look at what the other injuries are in the front of her, this guy was clearly focused on both of these girls from here up. Okay. Now, Xana has the same type of wound patterns. So all of this rage is focused on the upper quadrant and the face area of these girls, all three girls. You don't see that evidence with Ethan. And if this was a two-person perpetrator,
right,
which is an absolute ludicrous theory that is now being projected out there, saying that there could be a third or a second serial killer in the community out there in Idaho, is, as Rick Moranis would say, ludicrous speed.
Well, I'm always open to a scientific theory, a hypothesis. What's the justification for the hypothesis?
Well, but the reason that was leaked is because that the defense was hiring somebody that was going to argue that there was no way that Bryan Kohberger could have done this alone if it had went to trial. So that's where I believe that came from. Is that?
Yeah, I'm sure there would have been a scientific basis for making the argument. I just think that if you know anything about the psychology of these offenders, and I have no doubt that the expert would have, you know that there are people who work in teams. I remember Dr. Ramslin, who was, as we know, was in the position of having taught Kohberger at DeSales, has estimated in print that up to 20% of offenders, serial killers, for example, operate with another person.
Yeah, but he didn't have a relationship.
But I don't think so. No, I think in this case that all signs to me, and based on my experience, and it's just my opinion, is that this was a deeply isolated individual and a control freak who was not able to form those kinds of alliances with anybody, who would not have shared this with anybody.
Correct.
And to be honest, Chris, the scene was so out of control that it doesn't look like two people were there.
Well, the scene
would have been more
really
controlled
wasn't
with two people.
that out of control. I've seen worse scenes than what I just saw in these photographs.
It was in control, but the assertion of control increased. The
Right.
need to assert control increased, which makes it look like it was getting harder to control. Maybe
It
that's the
became
correct way to
frenzy.
phrase it.
Right. It
Right.
became a disorganized. It started as an organized, and it became a disorganized crime scene.
But despite it, he
Two
managed.
perpetrators cannot make that happen.
I don't think so, but I'm a scientist. I'm
There-
open to
Well,
speculate,
and yeah,
hypotheses.
and I always seek the truth, and looking at the evidence that is before us, there is no evidence in any way, shape, or form of any other digital footprint of a second perpetrator. Number one, there's no evidence of a pre-incident coordinated attack with a second perpetrator.
Right.
In any way, shape, or form. There's none. There's no phone information coming back 23 times with a second guy.
Right.
There's no phone information coming back at 9 a.m. in the same car with a second guy. Where did the second guy go? Did he run on foot when he left the house? Or did they both run and jump in his car and took off to WSU, where they tracked him through the video management systems and the cameras, the CCTV cameras that took him back to WSU? Did they see two people get out of that car? Did they see two people get into that car? You see, this is the piece of the puzzle that I think folks are forgetting. They actually see the car backing. That's what we've been told. Out of the parking space at WSU. He's on camera doing that. So my question is, well, where did the second guy show up? Is he in the house already waiting for Bryan? No, of course not. That's a absolutely ludicrous theory. And to float it on national TV on Megyn Kelly with 4.2 million
I didn't see it.
subscribers,
Who was it that was floating it?
people that write books.
Okay. Well, look. My guess is, and this is an example of where not having a trial, makes this difficult, is that somebody, was going to present a kind of experience and science-based opinion of why this would be difficult to attribute to one person, which is what people on this defense side are called to do. And somebody on the prosecution would have said, no, actually, I think it's plausible, and that would have been that. They would have argued their sides. But my opinion, just which we're entitled to, my opinion, based on a lot of experience of the psychology of this type of person, is that this was a lone offender. And also, as somebody astutely pointed out in the audience, Kohberger doesn't really seem like the type of guy that would cover for someone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
The guy's complaining about bananas.
Does that seem like the kind of guy that wouldn't be like, I'm going to write an extensive letter about how somebody else did this? That's the kind of guy that you. So I just think it's important to keep an open mind, and but to me, the story is suggestive of a person who, in privacy, had a fantasy that I would say at least went back to the time of the purchase of the knife, I think in May, right before the murders. And then you have a fantasy in search of of an enactment. And then it takes, this kind of anger at women, at school who are talking about him and turning him, that he may lose the job, the TA thing, or whatever, that becomes the the kind of straw that broke the camel's back for somebody with that fantasy, and then goes in and does this. And I think that one person just becomes the hyper focus, and unfortunately everything went haywire. But I agree with you, Chris. I think that it has to do with a deterioration in control over the scene. It's actually very reminiscent of the Otero murders.
Yeah, I mean, those were right. The main target there was
The family.
Josephine.
Right.
Yeah,
And then it all goes, you kill the whole family, and it becomes, but the thing is, I think it goes back to that idea of thinking that you're going to have more control than you do because you overestimate yourself. But I think most importantly for Kohberger, understanding what we do about his psychology, or at least glimpse about his psychology, is that he didn't get people. He didn't understand people.
Yeah, but you would agree too, right, Gary, that when we talk about BTK and we talk about Bryan, those two, Bryan wasn't in BTK's orbit.
I think that he was interested in a lot of offenders, not only as a student, but sort of extra interested, because we know from the cosplay thing and what was on the celebrate. We know that he was looking at a lot of offenders, Danny Rowling and Bundy and all that. I still believe that there was a special place in his psyche for Bundy. But it has become clear that this guy was interested in a whole variety of offenders, and they tended to be sexually motivated serial killers for a reason, right? And I think that's what he was interested in, and whether it was a special focus on one of them or not, there was a whole bunch of them that he was interested in, and I just think you want to kind of understand that he was aspiring to be that.
Yeah.
But nothing went the way that it was intended to go, and he was stopped from being a serial killer, I am convinced, by getting caught.
I agree with you 1,000%, and you've been right on target with this guy since before he was even caught, and I'm still convinced, for me anyway, thinking through this whole process, I've always felt he picked up where in his mind he wanted to one up Ted Bundy from the Omega House attack.
That's an interesting idea.
And I've always felt that behavior, that cross transfer behavior, because he was so obsessed with Ted, his mother was obsessed with him, evident the fact that she's writing letters and to the editor, etc. All of the photographs of him with Mount Rainier in the background, the park that you even connected, the one victim that they believe Ted Bundy, had done, but he hadn't copped out to it. But they interviewed him about it.
They asked him on his execution day.
Yeah, right. And so the fact that he picks the same park, Wawa Park or whatever the name of the park is, the fact that he goes up and in all of those selfies, a lot of them, in the background is Ted Bundy's dumping ground. All of the Mount Rainier and all of that mountain range. Okay. And now you get into his P problem, the P word.
Right.
And what kind of information is there? Everything that's connected back to Ted is in there. Then we get to page 118 and the dissertation that he's writing about duality of personality, which just happens to be the same information Ted Bundy was talking about by coinkydink. Okay. And you're right. All of these other individuals, though, Danny Rollins, all these other guys are kind of peripheral, I think. I think he's picking this character like Ted, and he's in a scenario, i.e. the house, with all women.
Well, I was caught off guard by the Rowling thing, because the only thing that ever made Rowling come into my mind when I was thinking about this case as it went along was the K-bar and the fact that there was this sorority house style kind of but the thing is, it was interesting because there are always surprises. It's interesting that there was he sort of establishes for himself a kind of identity as a killer. If he had become a serial killer, he would have honed, I'm sure, what he was doing. But we get clues to his psychology from the particular P that we know he was interested in. And, look, until he tells his story, we're not going to be able to understand what was being expressed exactly. I have no doubt, like everyone else of this type, it'll be some expression of domination, control, anger over the unpredictability of love objects in life, fury at women, blaming your failures on external things, being out of control, whatever. I'm sure we'll get that kind of thing. But I am interested in the formation of this sort of darker part of the self, the psychology of it. We get little glimpses of it in the writings online, if they are indeed from him, that sort of gradual deterioration of the self, the embracing of the shadow side of the self, the dark side of the self. One wonders if in studying this stuff, he was either honing it to get better at it or fighting demons and trying to hold it back. I don't know. That's something I think we're going to have to get a sense of with this guy. But one thing I heard, because there's always different speculations and things I'm hearing all over the place when I'm watching news and whatever. But, I heard somewhere, I don't remember where I heard it, but some question of whether like there was posing of the bodies. Remember, there was a point at which people were wondering about if they were positioned differently than the way they actually died. And I remember at the time saying, well, there's only one type of offender who poses. It's a fantasy-based offender like you see in a serial killer.
Right.
Right. I mean, if that happened, there's your giveaway that this was fantasy-based. There's no other reason to do that. And incidentally, nobody did more posing than Danny Rowley.
Well,
but it's an interesting thing, Chris, to think about.
I agree.
People speculate about posing.
Yeah, no, but I go back to killers like Dodd, like Wilson, okay? Where remember Wilson after he kills, and he hears a voice outside, and he thought the caller it was Matthew's aunt, and he hears, Danny, are you in there? That's what he thought he heard. And immediately, what did he say right after that? He goes, it's his mother. I got to kill her. What do I do? Do I kill her? So again, he went from this organized, me, I'm going to kill you. He executes the child, turns around, hears a voice, which happens to be his aunt. And immediately he says, oh my gosh, I got to kill her too now. I think that's what happened with Brandon or with Bryan. Bryan is engaged in this situation. All of a sudden, he's like, holy crap, there are two of them here. Holy crap, there's a third one coming up the stairs. What do I do? Just like Wilson tells me, well, I was also prepared to kill the cops if they got me. Okay. And remember, he went into a ravine, and he hid there while the patrol guys were driving over the bridge, rushing to the scene. Right. And Wilson was planning on killing anybody else in front of him at that moment before he made it back to the hotel. And what did he do? He followed right through. Within a couple of days, boom, he attacks a gal up in West Hollywood, stabs her 14 times in the chest. Okay. I think this is what's going on with Kohberger, and there's that sexual fantasy which is driving it, to your point, Gary, which is driving all of this.
Yeah.
And because everything from here up tells us everything we need to know. Okay. Everything, because his whole fantasy went sideways. It got lost.
That's what I think.
In the frenzy of the attack. This is not two people coming into a house. And I see some comments in there that about, well, there's no commonalities of Ted Bundy or anything like that. Well, actually there are. So I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you, but yeah, there are so many.
There are with a lot of offenders, with a lot of that type of offender.
Yeah, but he's not cosplaying
Right.
Danny Rollins. He's not dressing up.
That blade is interesting. I think
Well, he selected the K-bar.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a similarity. Okay, we'll give him that.
Yeah, in fairness.
But he didn't dress like him. He didn't select his victimology like him. There's craziness in there. Okay, in terms of that concept, it's not. Personally, this is my personal opinion. Okay, I'm convinced that Ted was his driver, and I hope one day that when he does start telling a story, he's going to start plug into that. And I hope when Ramsland starts telling her story, she's going to plug that in.
Okay. We'll see.
We'll see what's going
more
on.
to this story. I have no doubt, but I don't know. But I think that it would be typical for these people to have studied the work, so to speak, of other offenders. But the problem with this case is you always have to remember that I think he probably would have thought to himself, if anybody ever saw that I was looking this stuff up, I would just attribute it to the fact that this is what I'm studying for school.
Yeah, but he was a con man too. Remember where he puts the cameras in for his neighbor?
Oh, I understand. I mean, I remember that.
Let me help you.
I don't think he's going to talk.
I'm here to help.
Yeah, he will, Josh.
You think so?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, how long do you think? I mean, just give me a range.
He realizes that there's a transactional value to it.
Well, he's not allowed to make any money off of it.
No, but there's other ways to transactionally get something out of it when you're this type of person. It's about control, not about money. Money would just be a mechanism of control.
I think he's that much of a lunatic that he knows that people want the details, and I just don't think he's gonna. I mean, maybe he will, but if you guys think he will, I take your word for that. But
well, what killer in your memory didn't at some point start yapping away about what they did? You remember?
I mean, I've heard killers talk and not go into detail about what they did, but they've sort of gave their backstory and stuff, but without giving any detail on the crimes. And a lot of them I've heard say, I'm not going to get into the gore of it or whatever. But I don't know. I don't think he will.
I think that the psychology of it is that this is the type that would correct the record. It would bother him if the facts were wrong about him. So that what I think is that if anybody were to go in and interview him and say, I think I have it all figured out, yada, 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 and it was totally wrong, this is the type that would love, the same way that you get his admirers are an awful lot like him, that they love to catch you make a little factual error and then dismiss everything you say because you're obviously a moron because you had one little, the type of person. So like you say that something happened on a Tuesday and it was a Wednesday and then the whole argument gets thrown out. That's a type of person that there are problems in that logic, but they don't think so. They think their logic is flawless. You can't argue with that type, so don't bother. But the thing is, he's like that. That's the type. He always is right. So what I think is with that type of individual, you basically go in there and you intentionally say something wrong to get him to first of all think you're an idiot, because he has to think he's smarter than you to tell you anything, right? Or he'll clam up.
Right.
So it has to be that, and then he has to be correcting you. And the other thing is, there are techniques that are used. I mean, like you remember when John Douglas, member of one of the founding members of the Cold Case Foundation, very well known as the Mind Hunter. So he, when he went, for example, to go see Charles Manson, they let Charles Manson sit above them with his rear end like on the back of a seat, like he was giving the Sermon on the Mount or something, right? Talking down to them, because they knew the psychology of it was that's how he saw himself. Like he was a kind of, better than you, or like a messianic kind of you have to understand the psychology of what the person's doing by telling you the story. And I think, wouldn't you say, Chris, you've gotten over the years to master the art of interviewing. You know a thing or two about this, right? And there is a way to kind of do it where you get him to pontificate and correct you and so forth. And I think, and now this is total speculation, but I cannot imagine that when he was sitting in class and the class was looking mesmerized, listening about an offender, this is the kind of person who's thinking one day they could be talking about me and I'll do it better. I mean, wouldn't you say, Chris?
100%.
Absolutely. That's what I think. And I think that we want to understand that there are many ways in which one can assert a need for domination and control, sexually, through physical force, whatever. But another one is just being smarter than people. And what I think is you have a person who has a whole bunch of smart people, each one thinking they're the smartest one in the room, out there telling stories that he privately knows are absolute nonsense. In his defense.
Yeah,
out there,
and let's play
going
that
around telling nonsense stories, and he knows it. He knows it, and I think it amuses him.
Let's play that through, right?
Right.
Let's go to the bananas, the concept. Remember when I told the news that, hey, I have a source who said blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Okay. Everybody, the internet blew up like, oh, this guy doesn't know what he's, me. He doesn't know what he's talking about and all
You're
this.
lightning rod, brother.
I am, for some reason.
Oh.
But then accidentally it absolutely ended up 100% true that the inmates were hassling him. They were, torturing him through the vents, etc. Okay. Well, let's take this one step further to your analogy, Gary, right? And I see somebody in there saying, is there tension between Dr. Gary and Chris? No.
Who on earth thinks that?
We appreciate you being here. We love you too.
That's a bad read. Chris and I love each other.
I'm biting my lips, so that must mean something.
Boy, can you imagine, Chris, anybody thinking that there was tension between
I don't know. If I had a red dot in the middle of my forehead, that would be because my wife was saying, maybe you weren't listening. But that would be interpreted as, I'm sure I'm a Hindu.
That's fun.
That said.
No, Chris, I think we can emphatically say that's not the case.
Yeah. So he's writing in his letters to the staff the corrections, and this is what Dr. Brucato is going towards.
Of course.
He's correcting the staff about not following the manual in the prison.
I love it.
So that tells us a couple of things.
One, he's a douchebag.
Two, he's read the manual and he knows what parts of the manual to cite so he can cite them back to the staff. So they are going to have to remember, in one of the complaints, he writes, well, I didn't get an answer back. So I need an answer. And the supervisor in the prison system, they have to write, either you have to do it verbally and or, in writing. So there's a paper trail, inmate, whatever, 137, whatever his number is,
right,
said, I didn't follow the manual. The prison P&Ps, policy and procedures. Okay. This is how minutia Bryan Kohberger is. And this is where Dr. Brucato, I think, is going here, where I'm also going. We're on the same track here. Okay.
No tension.
That's right. Generally are on the same track.
Yeah. So as we go down the track here, okay, there is no way Bryan Kohberger's not going to tell his story, because if we take that now to another level, and now we're going to get onto another level, he has every piece of paper, photographs, everything that he has access to, because there will be an appeal in his case.
How though? How is there an appeal when he takes a deal?
Because the same thing what the judge said the day he sentenced him. Remember, everybody missed it, but I pointed it out. What did the judge say?
I don't remember.
He said, well, we all know there's never no such thing as a possibility of no appeal.
I mean, that thing's got to be ironclad, but I don't understand. I mean, I remember now what he said, but golly.
So you don't think that Anne, right? That Anne, who's already made $5 million off this thing,
yeah,
is sitting back and talking to an appellate attorney saying, hey, I want you to go and read every document in this thing, find every loophole, find every problem, okay? And we need to raise an appeal. This is a state, the state of Idaho, which is a great state, by the way. But the system there, again, we go back to this attitude of, well, these are residents. They're not inmates. Okay. And we want our residents, to have a quality of life. Okay. As if they're going to be coloring Easter eggs, every April. Okay. You've got people coming into the prison in December, giving them cookies. Okay. Cookies for isolation. Let me into the J block. Hi, Brian. How are you today? Oh, I'm doing great, Mr. Jones. Are they peanut butter or chocolate chip? Well, today we made peanut butter, Brian. Would you like one or two? Well, the manual says I can have two, so I'll take two. No problem, Brian. Okay. Oh, hey, can you have the Sarge come back and tell him my banana is bruised here? And that's a violation of section 24.13 in the policy and procedure manual. Okay, no problem. Now, what he's not telling people yet, but he's already cracked, i.e. he told his sister, he's talking to his sister, and he's talking to the rest of the people. Let me give you a simple example. Chad Daybell is writing letters from prison. And he's posted them. There are 10 of them. Just if anybody in the chat, if you didn't know this, just Google letters from Chad Daybell. Now, this is a guy that was convicted of not only killing his wife, but hacking children up and burning them in his backyard.
Correct. Yes.
And guess what? He's selling books in the letters.
And you know what the sad thing is? People probably don't buy them.
Oh, yeah.
Of course they are.
That's the thing of it, that sometimes these people put a spotlight on who we are, and it's deeply disturbing. You know what I'm saying? They it's like they reflect back public ideas and appetites in ways that make you go, dear Lord, that's the thing. How
long was Kohberger allegedly, from at the scene? Like, what is the time frame there?
Like 15 minutes, roughly.
Yeah. For what? Say it again.
The whole series of murders were about 15 minutes, right?
Yeah, I think
roughly
15 to 22 minutes. I think it was.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. So, and I just see a lot of people that not a lot, but there are people that are convinced that nobody could pull this off by themselves. That it's just not possible. And it first of all, it's very possible, and it happened. I mean, I don't understand. First of all, people go from, well, it wasn't him, and then he takes the plea deal, to, well, it's him, but he had help. And there's always this mysterious sort of helper, and that nobody can really take anything on face value. I mean, the guy stood up in court, admitted that he did it,
right,
to each individual count, and he didn't hide. He wasn't hiding anything for anybody else. The guy wasn't a social butterfly. I mean, did he have one friend in the world?
His knife
and mommy.
So how
in his mind, his knife, that was the extension of his arm, that kind of thing. No friend in the world, no.
and we're going to get to the the prison part of this, but I got a video that I want to play.
Yeah. But while you're pulling that up, I'll say, what was on my bingo card if there were a trial for out there theories? I wouldn't be surprised if somebody tried to use in the defense. I was wondering if they were going to go with, since somebody determined that he's autistic, perhaps he didn't have the dexterity or the fine motor movement that one would have to perpetrate, 4 murders in that brief of a period of time. I was wondering if they were going to go that route. And, but I'm not saying anything about that but at least what I've seen thus far. But I was thinking of all these kind of stretches of the imagination that one could go to try to get around, the DNA problem and other kinds of things. You really have to kind of get creative. And I could have seen some kind of attempt at, that kind of thing, to say, like, how could he have had the cat-like dexterity, that kind of thing. Chris, you've seen people use defenses like that. So what is this you're about to show, Josh?
I made a video, and it was a couple of years ago. It was I titled it, "Was 10 minutes enough time for Bryan Kohberger?" So I'm gonna play this really quick.
So someone in the audience said 9 minutes. I mean, I have to look it up, but
I mean,
it would have been more than 15. I think if you're making an estimate, it seems like 15 minutes or less.
Yeah.
Hey, Josh from the lab here, and I've been reading a lot on a lot of forums and seen a lot of videos talking about the murders in Idaho of the 4 college students. I wouldn't say it's not a big question, but one of the reoccurring questions that seems to get asked a lot is, how could somebody kill 4 people in 10 minutes with a knife? Is that possible? And by the way, that's going to be probably some sort of defense at some point. Now this isn't for the people that understand this, and I am not a doctor. I've never been a doctor. I have very limited medical knowledge overall, but I do have 2 nephews who are hemophiliacs. Hemophiliac, or hemophilia itself, is where your body doesn't produce enough of the clotting protein or blood factors when you get hurt. So it may take you a little longer to stop bleeding if you don't have the clotting protein. Now, there are different degrees of hemophilia, and some require medicine and some don't. My nephews they have a 0% clotting factor, meaning that if they did not take medicine to produce that, they could die from any sort of cut. It doesn't stop. So they need, and especially when they were younger, now it's a different type of situation, but they would have to take factor. And the only way to get factor is to put it into their body intravenously. When they were younger, there was a port put in their chest, and you would take the port, and what it was like just a little plastic ball, tucked right under the skin with a little hole in it. And that's when they were babies, you would take the needle and insert it into the port and then administer the factor. And as they got older, those ports become more and more difficult to keep clean. And if they get infected, it's a major, major issue. So they have the ports removed. Now, intravenous factor, and that's the name of the medicine, has to be administered. And so I've learned about femoral arteries. I've learned about abdominal aorta. I've learned about the brachial arteries. And so I'm going to just really quickly explain how it's possible. Now, the femoral artery is your lower body one. That's the one in the lower body, and it goes all the way down your leg. So if that artery, and I'm not saying that this is what happened, but if that artery is damaged in any way, say by a knife, then if it is a straight, clean cut, veins and arteries are typically sphinctoral. And what I mean by that is if you cut it, it will constrict and close itself off. If it's just a straight cut, if it's at an angle, then you have major problems and you need medical attention immediately. You would probably lose consciousness in close to 30 seconds. Death would be about 3 minutes after that. Brachial artery is a major issue, like all of them are. But that would be, as many of you know, it's the widowmaker. It runs through your arm and up to your neck and connects to your heart and so on and so forth. And it's a big artery, and it pumps through about 30 liters of blood an hour. Your body only has 5 liters on average for an adult, meaning basically you can literally die in 15 seconds from bleeding out from the brachial artery. They also taught us about stomach wounds and bruises, hematomas, and things like that. And, now I have no real use for this information except to pass it on to you, and you can probably just read this anywhere. But the abdominal aorta, if the puncture is deep enough, and depending on the viciousness of wound, and by the way, stomach wounds and punctures are devastatingly painful, meaning one of the first things that you're going to do is you're probably going to come close to blacking out from the pain. But if the abdominal aorta is cut, then you have 30 seconds or so. Death follows right after that. And before that, probably the acid from your stomach would spill into the wounds and you'd be incapacitated with pain that not many of us have experienced or would ever experience. And hopefully none of us get to. So the answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. It doesn't take long. I know this is a sensitive subject matter, but it's just something that I thought I could try to explain in a easier way, and hopefully I did it as respectfully as possible. My nephews are doing great. Hemophilia runs in my family. My mother was a carrier. My sister is a carrier. My two nephews, my sister's kids have hemophilia. I have a cousin that has hemophilia. And so blood disorders, blood loss, all that kind of stuff, we're pretty well versed in over here, unfortunately. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Very well done.
What's that?
Great. That was great.
So basically, when, I would always hear that, is that enough time for it to happen? I mean, it takes seconds, per stab wound, just depending on where you hit. And now that we've seen where, a lot of these stab wounds took place, like you said, 30 seconds at most, when you're stabbing somebody in that spot. So it's not, was there enough time? It's not, does there need to be more people? It's fairly simple and very fast. And, because I had to administer the medicine to my nephews when they were younger. Now they do it themselves. We had to go through all sorts of training and learn about, bleeding out and things like that. And so, I just remember going, I mean, it's insane that anybody would think that it couldn't happen. It could happen in less than 10 minutes. I mean, it doesn't take long at all, and so, that was kind of my point, is that, and I made that video quite some time ago because obviously there were no details about it at the time, but now that you could see where some of them were stabbed. Just a horrific way to die, but extremely fast in most circumstances where they were stabbed. So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Yeah.
Well, it's very interesting how you took a kind of hemophilia angle and interpreted it in that way. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
But I think when we're talking about this other perpetrator hypothesis, that is a hypothesis that would be put forward by someone who had the way of approaching a crime scene where there was no psychological profiling involved. You just are going by the facts on the ground. It's like the difference between a kind of Sherlock Holmes way of approaching a crime scene and a kind of Columbo way, right? So ultimately, the Sherlock Holmes way is just the facts, just based on scientific evidence on the ground. What can we guess about this person? As opposed to the more Columbo thing where you're getting a kind of psychological feel for who the individual is and how to undo the person's ego and get them to slip up and attach yourself to them and all that. And I think that that's the kind of opinion that would come from somebody who didn't think very much of profiling or the psychological approach. I think that if you take the psychological approach to it, the type of offender that this is precludes the idea of having a partner that would do this. And this is why, to me, it comes across as so improbable. But I think that that it depends on how you approach a crime scene. See what I'm saying? But Chris, what it sounds like you're saying is if you take everything off the table except just the facts on the ground, you just don't see any evidence of a second human being there other than the victims, right? No trace of another person.
Yeah, and I weigh that against hundreds of crime scenes that I've walked into.
Right, but that's where
this isn't my first rodeo. And when I say this stuff, that's what I'm saying. Okay, I mean, I've been in things, I hate to say this, 10 times worse than this.
Well, unfortunately, yes, I think.
Okay, and when I don't mean to be cold to the victims or the families, but that's reality. Okay, there was a case in Vista where Josh Jenkins, he hacked up his entire family with an axe, with a hatchet, and he threw them in the living room, and then he lit the house on fire.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a situation, was right on the border with us. Okay, his name is Josh Jenkins. You can look him up. Not you, Gary. I know you know him. But the public can look him up. Now think about that. Everybody was like, holy crap. Okay. Well, he took his little sister, he was adopted. He took his little sister to Home Depot and had her pick the axe, select the axe that he would use within 3 hours to hack her up.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
In fact, he may be coming up for parole. This was a long time ago.
Ugh.
Now, that is a horrific crime scene where you have 5 people stacked into a living room and they've all been lit on fire after getting chopped up with a hatchet. So this is why when we see evidence of, a blitzkrieg like this is what this is. This was a blitzkrieg type of attack. It was the type of situation where Kohberger controlled the environment rather rapidly through the brutality of the striking. And because there are blankets involved, because both of the girls upstairs are sound asleep, by the way, for the record, for everybody, they are not awake when they are initially attacked. Maddie and Kaylee are sleeping. They are sleeping. Now they were awoken when they were getting stabbed. And I believe that he straddled either in front, on top of them, jumped on the bed on his knees and started going to town on both of them, or he hits Maddie, lays over Maddie, and starts stabbing Kaylee. Those are the two scenarios. While that's going on, Kaylee, who's on the inside, is kicking, but the blankets are preventing her feet from making contact with Kohberger. And that's why you're not seeing transfer. You know, what you're seeing is cast off from the knife. And remember, if he's stabbing through the covers, which he was, because we have evidence of that, okay, where he misses twice Xana and he hits the bed. Okay. Well, when that knife goes into that bed, guess what it does? It wipes that blade. Because that cloth, or if it's a mattress, whatever the material is underneath there, is going to absorb all of that blood. And that's why you only get cast off probably from the hilt. Okay. And that's why you have Maddie's, Kaylee's, and potentially Xana's blood all connected together. There are cross-contaminations going on because he's using that one weapon. Okay. And there's another really disturbing picture of, I believe, it's evidence of, again, he pushes Xana and traps her between the bed and the nightstand. And that's when he takes a stab at her. And that's where you'll look at the photographs. There are cuts in the mattress along the bed. So he missed. He missed her. That's because she's fighting. And that's why you have the defense wounds. Okay. But he also had to deal with Ethan quickly. Now he's already attacked both women upstairs, and he knows how effective going for the upper quadrant is, where all of the major arteries are headed towards what they call the horse's tail. In your central nervous system behind your neck, right here at the base of your skull, okay, is what they call the horse's tail. And the horse tail is all of your nerves from your central nervous system going to the brainstem are all right here. Right here. Okay? And it looks just like a horse tail. And that's why they call it the horse tail. And any pathologist will tell you this, because I've stood in hundreds of autopsies and had doctors give me 101 anatomy. Okay? And that horse's tail runs right through your spinal column, okay, all the way down your body. Okay? Now think about this. Those arteries that Josh just gave us, the femoral, the jugular, blah, 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 okay, the carotid, they all run up towards your heart, and they kind of make a left turn, and they start turning in, okay? He hit them immediately in those areas, and he saw how effective it was, in my opinion, on Ethan. Because Ethan was gone. I and all mercy from the Lord, Ethan was gone in probably less than 6-7 seconds. It was over for Ethan. He didn't even know what happened. That's how brutal this attack was. But that's also, and I know you're going to find this as if, I'm cold, but I'm not cold. I think that was a huge blessing as quickly as it happened for Ethan. It wasn't so with the girls.
But doesn't it tell you, Chris, that he knew how to rapidly eliminate a person?
Well, I don't know, Gary, because Ethan was getting up.
Because I wonder if the women were not prolonged, at least the intended target. But it sounds like he might have just, by accident, had a blow with a knife that was just, what was
So,
necessary for that.
To your point, he may have studied, right? He may have studied the most effective, target points, okay, within the human body. I had a suspect one time tell me, sorry, I just bought this new chair, and the thing, I'm still trying to get used to it, so I keep moving around. I'm sorry. But I had a suspect one time tell me, now he didn't.
You look like me, Chris, moving around like that.
I know, right? He tells me, he says, well, typically you don't want to hit them in the head. And I said, why? He said, because it's like hitting a bowling ball with a knife. It just scrapes right off. Okay. And what he was talking about were all the lacerations on my victim's head. Okay. And there were, down to he couldn't penetrate the cranium. He was trying to stab him in the cranium and get through to the brain, and he couldn't do it. The knife kept shooting off the brain or the skull. Okay. Well, in this case, Bryan went for this quadrant first, the chest, the lungs, and we see arterial spray, we see asphyxiation spray, where basically it's high velocity blood from the lungs, from the esophagus, where two of the girls and Ethan did this. And that's where you get the high velocity. They're very small. There's evidence.
It's like aspiration
blood. Correct.
Yes.
Right. And that's where in Kaylee's report, the ME put it out there. Okay. That also goes towards I think he was trying to strangle her. Okay. Which is very interesting, because that also shows us a potential sexual component into the game here, right?
Well, asphyxiation is a favored mechanism of sexually motivated offenders, sometimes because you can kill a person slowly, and sometimes because you can cause the person to pass out. But it's also favored by domestic abusers that explode into rage towards a partner, can put their hands around someone's throat. We see this in research that this is it's for some reason it is a commonly used mechanism of power and control and domination by men toward females.
Shows you that you can take the life away from somebody, and can control what keeps them alive. And what, I could take, it's like you put your hands around someone's neck and you say, I could choke the life out of you right now. And you ease up, and then you can do it. It's a very sick and twisted.
It takes a long time.
Yes, it does.
So you see in Bryan's personality, the world sees Bryan. Here's Bryan's personality. Did you so and so such and such on this day? Da da da. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yes. And you know what he's holding inside, right, Doc? He's got this mask of public persona. But behind that mask is the rage I just explained. Behind that mask, that public projection
of control,
that public projection, control, dominance, violence, all the violence is here behind that mask. Okay. Now, at some point, right now he's recharging his battery, I'll call it, because he can no longer, he has no other desire to study other killers right now. because he is that guy. So what is he going to do? He's going to turn all of his attention to his legal documents. All of his attention is going to come into his photographs that we are now seeing, but he has the unredacted photographs. He gets to see his work and concentrate on what he did right and what he could have done differently.
But you see, Chris, I'm always very interested in people that have contrary ideas to what is being presented. And there is someone in the audience who's basically saying, look, if you read the ISP documents, forensic reports, they don't support any of this narrative and yada, yada. And I guess what I would say to you is maybe walk through why what you're saying is in those documents. In other words, that this is not just because I think for people who aren't professionals and don't know how you arrive at a conclusion like that, they all think they're, armchair professionals, because they've read, one tatty supermarket true crime book or something, right? So they know everything. So the question is, how do you explain in an educational way, right? Not, defensively, we don't mean it that way, but just honestly, like, how do you explain how everything you're saying is there in the pages?
Yeah.
How do you arrive at that conclusion logically?
Well, I had a defense attorney one time ask me, do you consider yourself an expert? That was the question.
Right. Work a couple of weekends, right?
And here was my response. What's your definition of an expert? And so I served it right back to the defense attorney. And when he started giving me the definition, I answered yes, yes, no, yes. And we went right down the line. And when it was all over, the judge, the Superior Court judge, because I was getting voir-dired, said, ladies and gentlemen, counsel, Detective McDonough is an expert. I have been certified in Superior Court probably 20 times as an expert. Now, how do you get there, to your question? Well, first of all, you have to work homicide for 13 years. Every day.
Right. Like the old joke where the woman stops a guy in the street in Manhattan and says, excuse me, how do you get to Carnegie Hall?
Yeah.
Practice.
Yeah. I mean, just not, I don't play a homicide detective on YouTube.
Right.
Okay. Even today, I'm actively working murder cases with law enforcement agencies around the country. Even today, Gary knows it. Josh knows it. People were like, is that Chris McDonough on the Michael Vaughn case in the background? And then they were like, but he's a YouTuber. Yeah. Again, remember, you have to know my history. Okay. And everybody was like, well, wait a minute. Isn't this the guy that put the 3 kids in prison for false, killing Stephanie Crow? Isn't that guy? Okay. Yeah, but you forgot the other part of it. Isn't he the guy that said Richard Tewitt's not the killer? Isn't he the guy that said that? And I was not the guy that would testify against Richard Tewitt because I felt he was an innocent man. And by the way, what did the jury do? He's not guilty. Okay. That's a different story. Okay. However, I've had all of these things behind you, all these training, all of this stuff here. Okay. You don't buy this off of eBay. Okay. You have to understand how this stuff comes into view here. Now, I have nothing to prove to anybody. I don't have to. I have hundreds of newspaper articles. And Josh, I want to send you something here real fast. Okay. This is a caper here. So the other day I was talking about, remember I told the story about when we were walking down the alley and the little girl was essayed and then the guy started shooting at me.
Yes, I remember that story.
Okay, well, I just found the article the other day. Karen's like, maybe you should start putting some of this stuff some of this stuff up. I said, okay.
I love Karen because she sits on your shoulder like an angel.
Well, she's a researcher.
Like the better angel of your nature.
All this stuff is sitting in my garage. Seriously,
It's great.
And the other and I burnt a lot of. I threw it all away.
You mean when you retired?
Yeah, I burned it all.
Yeah, symbolically. Yeah, just to...
I did. I literally got a trash can. I took my case files. I still have some really important ones down here. One of them is Leticia Hernandez.
Oh God,
it's right behind me.
That case, boy, haunts you.
Okay, and anyway, it's sitting back here, and I guess to your point, Gary, I don't have to do anything. So this is here. This is a newspaper article. He was a 261 suspect. We call it a 261. 12:45 in the evening. Paul LaCroix, myself, and a third guy. Actually, his name was Eddie Morton. Okay, we're walking down this alley, and next thing you know it, you see right here, finding somebody 261 tried to gun down his 13-year-old victim and 2 police officers last Saturday. Okay. If you go to the next page, it talks about what he did. These 2 guys, I'm walking down the alley with Paul, and these guys and there's my name. 2 men ran up, contacted police officer LaCroix and Chris McDonough on foot patrol.
Right.
And then he started shooting at us. The suspect then fired his gun in the direction of fleeing teenagers and the officers, and that's where I hid. I grabbed Paul, and that's when you hear the rounds, bing, bing, hitting the dumpster. Okay. And the girl falls right in front of me. And I told Paul, I said, return fire on this guy. Let's get it going. And Paul leans around the dumpster and boom, boom, he starts cracking rounds downrange. Okay. Now, and that we don't have to show any more of this, Josh, but
sure.
I bring receipts to the conversation, Gary, right? Is basically what I'm saying. Okay. I don't just say stuff and then expect you to believe it or not believe it. I don't have to have you believe it. I guess that's what's different about me. I don't care. I lived it.
Right. But in fairness, the same individual who was asking that, I think there was a good faith tone to it, because they're also saying, I think correctly, that the tearing down of the house,
that's huge,
was a really dopey move, right? And in terms of, and I agree with that point. But I think if the question is in good faith, I think what the person is saying is, scientifically speaking, how does one construct from what is in those documents the viewpoint that has been presented, right? Because what obviously I know, I'm saying this for talking, but I know that if you have a lot of experience, you can read between the lines, and based on other offenders and the way they operate and the blood spatter and other things, start to piece together the narrative. I think what the person is saying is, help me understand how you got to this narrative from what is there. I think a lot of it comes from the examination of blood spatter in the photo, correct?
Yeah.
So you're piecing together a narrative based on where from many years of having looked at blood in crime scenes, you're reconstructing this narrative in terms of the order of the killings, the intensity of the killings based on the autopsy reports and so forth. And so the story comes together. What I'm doing is I'm adding to it what we can deduce or infer about the psychology of a person from that. But just based on the facts, I think that the facts from what I observed in the imagery support the hypothesis that you're laying out. And I think that would have all been meticulously laid out in court. Incidentally, Chris, we have an eminent expert on blood spatter in the foundation,
Right.
who I'm sure is taking a look.
Yeah, of course. There, Karen has taken a look, meaning not my Karen. No,
Karen Elliott.
Karen Elliott.
Yes,
Right.
brilliant woman.
Right. And I guess I come at this thing from, an advantage because me and many others have worked murder for all these years. And you see things that you go, okay, now, by the way, this is a learned behavior. You go to school. I've been to crime scene recreation schools. I hold certifications from institutes on homicide investigations, robbery investigations, sexual assault investigations. I hold the highest credentials that you can earn in a law enforcement career in all three of those, with an emphasis in homicide investigation. And then they sent me through the criminal behavior analysis classes through the FBI, the BAU, where I honed an expertise. And as if I'm sitting here now on the stand talking to a jury, my expertise is criminal behavior analysis with an emphasis in pedophilia, those who choose children for sexual gratification during the commission of murder, meaning they're killing kids for sexual gratification. That is my expertise. Detective McDonough, what cases have you consulted and or worked on? Well, I was involved in the West Memphis 3 case, for an example, in Memphis, Tennessee, where 3 boys were slaughtered, and I was asked to consult and conduct interviews on Christopher Morgan. And by the way, if anybody wants to see that, Josh has seen it. He didn't know about it. I told him about it. It's on YouTube. Somebody put it on YouTube where you can go back in time and you can watch me with my hair,
It was flowing. I'll tell you that.
Parted down the middle, my fluff, the McFluff. Okay. And then they, and the list goes on, right? John Benet Ramsey. I was involved in that situation back in 1997, right in the month of January, almost immediately thereafter the murders, where I was tasked with finding a sex offender that was approximately 6 blocks away from the house during the commission of the crime. Okay. I was asked to find that guy and try to interview that guy and send my package back to, whatever it was, Boulder with Lou Schmidt at the time. Now, you can go find that too. Just do Detective Chris McDonough, Oceanside Police, LA Times. You'll find that article. And I only talk about things where I did it. Okay. I have receipts. Matthew Checky, Elizabeth Smart, before they caught her or before they found her. Remember the conversation, if you haven't watched the Netflix movie yet, where Ed Smart was saying he wanted to put a sketch out, but Salt Lake Police Department said, no, we don't want you to put the sketch out because we don't, we're not sure. We think it's Reeky. How many of you on my channel have heard me talk about Reeky, where we did the victim risk continuum and said, Reeky is not your guy. He's not your guy. 4 months, 5 months later, the sister has an aha moment. She wakes up and goes, I know who it is. It was the guy that did the painting in the house. Lo and behold, that was the guy. Okay. That was what the risk continuum connected it to. Okay. So we told, when I say we, me and a couple other people, we told Ed, put the picture out. Make it happen. Against the will of Salt Lake Police Department. And guess what? Within 3 or 4 days, they had a phone call. Boom. Pow, zoink. Okay. Now, these are the types of things that I've done in my career. I didn't ask for it. God had a plan. I just followed his lead. And he guided me and directed me. But mine was selfish. Because again, it was predicated upon my own personal experience with my oldest son. And I beat that horse to death where he was almost abducted. And I made a deal with God. You give me an opportunity, I will hunt these guys down for the rest of my life. And guess what? I'm still doing it. I'm still talking about craziness. I just worked with the Michael Vaughn thing. I'm still hunting. And by the way, we're capturing them. And the difference between guys like me and like Dr. Brucato, I don't have his education level. This guy's like one of the smartest tools in the shed like these amazing legal minds. Okay. But I think like the hunter. He thinks like the scientist. Okay. As he correlates stuff sometimes, you've heard Dr. Brucato say, well, Bryan Kohberger looks at people like bugs. And he sees them in jars. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Gary, but I'm doing
like
it anyway.
Examining a bug in a jar. Yeah,
like examining a bug in a jar. Okay.
Right.
Well, I'm the kid that catches the bug and puts it in the jar.
So then who's
puts
the bug?
it in the jar and shakes it around a little to see what the bug does. Okay. And then we put it in the museum and the scientist comes in and goes, how did all these bugs get in here? Well, the museum got them from a guy that went out and caught them and thought like the bug to catch them, anticipated what the bug's moves would be to catch them before they got in the jar. And that's the difference between a good homicide investigator and somebody who's born with it as a gift from God and somebody who pretends. And I had a 90% solvability rate in the cases that I worked. 10%, I couldn't either arrest you, but you knew that I knew you did it.
Right. But Chris, just because in the interest of time, just to sort of shut down this endless contrarianism that we're seeing in the chat, it's very simple, in my opinion. Okay. This guy who was meticulously obsessing over the bruising of a banana, if he really believed that he had evidence to exonerate himself, would have written to everybody and their mother to straighten out the record about the bananas and about that he didn't do it and it was someone else, some other dude. Secondly, the fact of the matter is the guy confessed. Thirdly, I mean, you don't take a deal just for, giggles, right? Okay, as you pointed out, Josh. And then you have the fact that you can't really get around the science of the DNA problem, in my opinion. I don't know how somebody who is out stargazing has a sheath with DNA on it that can only within 127 octillion be linked to your relative, gets into that room unless a little drone flies it in and drops it in the room where someone else did it, and then raises the question of why on earth somebody would do that. So what I think is that when you have people who identify with this guy's psychology, what they do for him is they go out and they try to knock, at and be the smartest person in the room. But sometimes it leads a person down a kind of a path where they wind up not seeing the forest for the trees, which of course is the essence of the Kohberger problem. All the obsessionality and missing, the heart of the man. So what I think so you see, he didn't confess. He said yes, and he agreed. I mean, this is like the fundamentalism of
what it is.
religion, elevating it to a level of faith.
I am not.
So we're done.
I am not interested in semantics. I'm not interested.
He said he did it.
I know what he did. He knows what he did.
Right.
And the reason he took the plea deal is because he didn't want to die. That's why. He didn't want to be executed. And by the way,
I appreciate a good contrarian, but not when it gets to the point where it's doing it for the sake of it.
And
right.
I will say that look, the fact that a deal was made with him is, to me, is bothersome, because he's the worst of the worst kind of offender, and the worst of the worst deserves the worst punishment that is on the table. Now, I understand that it saves time, it saves money, it saves, heartache and grief. And I am just shocked that they went along with it. But it's
right. But in other words, it doesn't make sense that somebody who is so obsessed with getting away with something would cop to. In other words, this guy wants.
He knew he was cooked, Dr. Gary.
That's what I'm saying, in the simplest way possible. And also, I'm dying to know what Chris is looking for. I could just imagine. I'm waiting for him to whip out some kind of like.
Let me read a couple. I got to read a couple of these.
But yes. But I just want to answer a question that somebody kept repetitively posting, because I think it was important to them that I answer it. So I just want to answer quickly, and I appreciate very much that the person who posted it has Emily Dickinson as their icon, because Emily Dickinson is my favorite female poet, Poe being my favorite male. What the person is saying is this: if I were to go in and meet Kohberger and he explained why he did it, would I believe him? Now, this question can be seen two ways. And by the way, the person in the audience is saying, yeah, but he claimed his innocence right up until the time. So does everyone. Okay. So now, so what this person is asking is a very interesting question, because it can be seen from two angles. It could be seen cynically. It could be bye-bye. It could be seen cynically, right? You see, the imitation of Kohberger is perfect, right? So eventually the group can't take you anymore because you're too.
OJ also said he was innocent too.
Right. So. Bye-bye. Okay. So that everyone has a limit. So in other words, the question can be seen from two angles. It could be seen cynically, right? Like, you think you know this person, and would you go in there and even believe it if this person said you were wrong? It's possible that's how the person means this, in that kind of spirit. I would like to think that they mean the question more like, would this guy even tell you the truth? If you went in there and this guy said, here's why I did it, I'm going to lay it out, how much of it would you believe? And to be perfectly honest with you, not much. I think he will talk, but I think that ultimately, it's sort of like the stargazing story. Stupid stories that any intelligent person would be able to tell are nonsense, because he lacks the empathy to feel that you could tell the story is nonsense. So I think there'll be just enough to see. Thank you, Fox 5. I didn't think you meant it cynically. I think it's a very good question. Sometimes the people in the audience ask really good questions.
Yes, they do.
And this is a question also for Chris.
Comments are fun.
Right. I love that question, and I love the Emily Dickinson thing. So Chris, I'm going to turn that question to you too.
Oh.
If we went in and talked to Kohberger and he laid out his story of why he did this, how much of it do you think would be true?
In the beginning, it would be a fantasy.
That's what I think. But eventually, don't you think he'd want the truth out there?
Yeah.
To boast and be taught in schools and enter the annals of crime.
He's play it up.
Right.
He's going to play it. And I wanted to go back to your thought process about when you asked me, I don't have a lot. I don't have a lot of stuff. I don't put the stuff on the walls.
Okay.
Okay.
I think it's funny when people question your experience.
Here-
I knew you were going to whip out the receipts.
This is just one book. Okay. Just one book. Okay. And here's one certification I'll show you for the record of when you ask. Okay. When you ask this is what this is, and anybody can go look it up. Okay. This is from the Commission of Peace Officers. Okay. Standards and Training, ICI. There you go. You can look at it.
Right.
Okay. What is my specialty from the Robert Presley Institute of Criminal Investigation? Well, it says right there, homicide investigation, right there. Anybody can read it. I bring the creds. Guess what? It took me over 6 years to earn this certification. Look at the date, 1996. Okay. I was transferred into homicide in 1990. I had to work murder for 6 years before they would send me to this school. That's my credentials. That means by the time I got to this school, I had gone through many murders. Because you see, this one here in 94, this is the core course to go to the Robert Presley Institute. It's from the Department of Justice, California Department of Justice. Anybody can look it up. Okay. And then you start going through other things like these certifications about crime scenes, about blood spatter analysis. And then you throw in commendations that say, yeah, this guy can actually do this. And we're going to send him to school and pay for it. Okay. So essentially, I have 2 master's degrees in homicide investigation. That's what this means.
Well,
no further questions, Your
no,
Honor.
no more questions. Right. So there are super chats that I think.
Yeah, I gotta add. Let me do some of these
in the interest of time, because people are sending contributions and asking these great questions, and I think it would be good if we can. But it bothers me that ultimately these people who I think are ultimately motivated to get your goat can sometimes do it, and because I think that's the Kohberger-esque.
I don't think I don't. But
people have, yeah.
I don't think they can just go because I don't know where it's tied up. Okay, Lori Lowe says,
and plus I'm sick, so it doesn't bother me.
That too.
Thanks to my wife.
So I love Lori. Lori is one of these people who I get. She's always writing to me on my piano page, and she called into Josh's show and told the most beautiful stories about her personal spiritual experience.
There's another piece they don't know.
Powerful. Oh, what a beautiful.
Look at that guy.
I love it.
They used to call us the meatheads.
Yeah.
Look at those shooters.
That's me right there. That's me right there. Well, that's John,
isn't it?
That's me right.
Hilarious. I like that they're in size order. It looks like a xylophone.
It is. That's Sean. That's me. That's John. And that's a geek. That his name is a geeky. We used to call him Squiggy.
Squigs.
And we would stack up at the door that size. That's another part of my career I don't talk about.
I love that photo. But seriously, Chris, Lori is somebody you'd love if you had heard her beautiful testimony about her spiritual experiences. She's a really terrific person and all around, and she also has this very unique way of speaking, right, Josh? She's got this sort of like, it sounds almost like kind of like. Yeah, like a kind of Long Island mom kind of thing. She's awesome. I love her. So what is Lori's
question? Think of what I proposed about if you want him to start talking, we have to stop talking about him, and he will want to be in the limelight again. And I think that that's sort of true. I think that once the focus, if you know, and I said earlier that I didn't think that he would ever talk, but I do think that if he does talk, it would be down the road when the limelight is off of him, when people have sort of moved on to, you know, other things, because this case still garners a lot of attention. And so I think I know what you mean by that. And I think that
Yeah,
I think there's
it's a
something to it.
balancing act that we have to do.
Right.
It's a balancing act because unfortunately it is important that we understand the offender and we sort of learn from them, and the public needs to understand. But at the same time, it feeds right into the, you know, the yearning of the individual to be talked about it, and it's an interesting point.
Right.
But I think you can, you know, you can feel it when somebody is gratuitously doing it, and when somebody's doing it in the interest of science and understanding the offender because you have to, right? But yeah, it's a really, really good question.
Yes, it is.
I agree, and gets right to the heart of, you know, are you giving in to the demand of these types because they're, you know, they act like a bratty child that's not going to let you not talk about them, right? And I'm fascinated by the way that other offenders became almost jealous of the way that the public was talking about Kohberger and insinuated themselves into it. You know what I mean? That sort of snuck themselves in there so that they would be
Right.
of interest. You know, it's like an amazing thing. Like, for example, in the Hoyerman case, you see Keith Jesperson sticking himself in there, so he's in the paper, right?
Yeah.
BTK sticking himself into the Kohberger case. It's like, you know, the craving for attention is so intense that these individuals have to hurt themselves. So yeah, that's a really, really good question. Now, this one looks like it's directed to me.
Yeah, it says, Dr. Gary, didn't another serial killer ask if anyone else was arrested when put into custody? John Gacy. Would Bryan have copied him?
That's fine. I mean, I personally think that was a red herring kind of comment that he threw out there, and you know, but I don't know if it was an invitation of Gacy. I certainly think he would have known about Gacy as an offender, but I'm not sure. You know, I don't think so. I think it was just to throw people off the path and sort of say, you know, is it possible you are looking at somebody else? See, I think to say, was anybody else arrested? What I think is fascinating is that people who want to think that there's another killer will interpret that to mean I was involved and where's the other guy who was? I don't hear it that way. What I hear is, wasn't me. Did you get anybody else? Anybody else you're arresting and thinking of?
Right.
You see what I mean? But if you want to hear it, it's a fascinating example of where you see what you want to see.
I
Of a
remember
confirmation bias.
and that caused a lot of spark and speculation, you know, when he did that. And I think it sort of did what it was intended to do for sort of the general public, but not necessarily the police, because there was nobody else that obviously was arrested. And this one from Donna says the male DNA on the knife could have come from the person who packed it to send. I mean, I would assume that is possible as well. But once again, you know, that's unspecified DNA.
Right.
And, you know, it could,
Right.
there could be a lot of reasons.
This comment, which I think is important to address, where someone says, how could you claim to understand his psychology when you haven't met? Well, first of all, the autism diagnosis was not made until he was a suspect in a murder, to our knowledge, correct? Okay. This is not a classic situation that we're aware of so far, where this person's diagnosed in childhood and he's moving along in life, and, you know, so in other words, that's an interesting thing to me. I eventually want to see him independently assessed. We also, for example, weren't allowed to find out if he was a psychopath. You weren't allowed to use the word psychopath in the, you know, the courtroom, right? So I think that one day there'll be an independent assessment and we'll get that. But you have to understand that and this was a very good board certified person who did the assessment, but the context is different when somebody is not. And but to the person's point, what we are talking about is what can be generalized about a type of offender based upon similar people who commit those offenses. And so that is very different than saying, I am sure that that's why somebody did something. The idea is, like a good scientist, taking information that you have from similar people and saying, generally, this is the motivation. That this person is trying to do is suggest that this is like that thing where you're speculating that a public figure has a medical condition that you haven't That's not what this is. Talking about various possibilities of why somebody would do what they would do based on other people who have done similar things. And that's how you operate when you're a psychologist.
You guys are not questioning PIs. You're questioning certified, educated people, experts in the field that we are discussing. And it's not like, a lot of it is their opinion, but it comes from an educated place. So,
well, I have a question. I have a question based on that.
All right.
Have we been wrong? Have we been wrong?
No.
No, I'm asking whatever the chatter is. I'm not even watching, to be honest with you. And you can tell I was looking through my book and kind of reminiscing for a moment there.
No, but I think the person is what they're sensitive.
Have I been wrong?
Well, that's another animal.
Well,
that's all.
Have I been wrong? I want to ask that question to that person.
I think there have been places where there might be a little thing here and there that was off, but generally speaking,
have I been wrong?
No, I think the profile was pretty accurate.
I stood behind that house,
right,
and I said, "This guy knows this neighborhood." Before they caught him, was I wrong?
No.
Oh, but Chris,
no, wait, right? Well, this ain't about you and me, Gary. This is about them. Okay,
but I think what the person is trying to point out, which is a good point.
Person, who is this person?
Let's not even bother.
Okay.
I think that the person is what the person is trying to say is, which I think is a generally good point.
What's a good point?
Is that some of the statements that people can make about an offender they've never met go far without having actually spoken to an individual. But what we're saying is, in general,
then why do you go to a cardiologist and ask him what's going wrong? What's wrong with me?
Exactly.
No, I like to think that
that's
people,
the same logic.
People are asking.
Why don't you ask Blum, okay, who writes books about how this whole thing went down based on conversations that he had with people about how it went down?
You're right. Exactly.
Okay. Well, guess what? I'm one of those people that you would ask. Okay.
Well, not only are you, but people do ask you.
Why give a prescription when you're not looking for a diagnosis?
Right, but what I'm trying to say is there's a difference between generally describing why an offender of a certain type does a thing and saying, I know for sure that that's why. If you listen carefully, what I'm always saying is,
right.
Generally, the reason one would do this is, if I could go in and ask, I would want to know this. We don't, and I just think it's what it is kind of toying with a partial truth to try to attack it. These are people that would make marvelous defense lawyers.
Yeah.
But getting back to this is someone else.
Let me say this really quick. A wise man once said that you can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a bull's ass, but you'd rather take the butcher's word for it. Charlie or Chris, John Douglas said,
another very bright person who has previous.
After a violent case, every day, family issues felt trivial, and switching back to normal life took work. Did you feel similar? What helped you stay grounded and keep empathy for ordinary stressors?
That's a good question. That's a good question for Chris.
That's a great question. I have a gift. I'm able to compartmentalize my work and my relationships independently. In some ways, I'm kind of similar to a perpetrator in my not my thought process, but in my ability to shut it off. And I can give you, even today, Karen has no idea a lot of the things that I've seen, that I've gone through, because I don't show them to her emotionally, mentally, or physically. I just don't do that. And that is a gift from God. You either have it or you don't. It's kind of like, law enforcement officers go into certain arenas because they hone their skill sets. Okay. I was made to solve crimes. I see minutia details. I see things that other people go, holy crap, we didn't see that. Okay. And I mean, Gary's been in meetings with me where we are going over cases for the Cold Case Foundation. And I'll be like, well, what about this blood on the couch?
Right.
And somebody will say, what blood?
Well, I've sat there and watched you question people too.
Well, but that's it. You see, for me, it's not about me, even though people think it is. Okay. And they project that onto me. That's about them. That's their problem. I had a guy one time who blew this clerk's head off by sticking a shotgun in his mouth while the guy was on his knees. And I sat with him in the interview, and I've asked many detectives this, and this is why I've trained detectives. I said, who is the most important person in the room? That's the first question I asked them. And any cop I see put their hand up and go, well, we are, I say, wrong. What is the most important thing in the room is the second question. And they go, well, training, experience, all this stuff. I said, wrong. The most important person in the room is the individual who's going to tell you why he stuck the shotgun in the mouth of the clerk. The most important thing in the room as to why he's going to say that is the chair. The fact that he's in the room, the chair becomes the tool to build trust, because trust is shared. It is not earned in that relationship. To get them to explain to you, Bryan Kohberger, you don't go into a guy like Bryan Kohberger as an unexperienced investigator and say, so you want to talk about baseball? When he's going, so why are we here? Internally with the mask. Okay. I would have sat Bryan Kohberger in that room for at least an hour, sipping on his favorite drink. Maybe even ask him, hey, you like, what are you hungry? Do you need a bean burrito? I hear you're a vegan. And it's that point, those are the kind of things, okay, that you take your time and you have to understand how to get there. You don't send two guys into the room who later on tell the public, well, we really don't know. We didn't have a theory. Really? What time is, Barney Fife start on, the old TV series? Remember, that was the ISP's position. Well, they looked at each other like, well, we really didn't find anything weird on his phone. Remember, he told the news that. He told CNN. And they were like, really? What? Uh-huh. And then all of a sudden, Celebrite comes out and says, well, yeah, actually we did. We found a whole bunch of crap on his phone. Most of it, gag, women sleeping, all this other stuff. But for some reason, they didn't think that was suspicious. Well, guess what? Those are the same two guys that sat down with Bryan Kohberger. That's a huge mistake. That was a huge mistake.
Well, that's an interesting thing to just. That's a whole other animal discussion.
I know, but that's would you agree that was a big mistake, Gary?
I think it's an interesting question. I mean, to get into it, because I think it depends on what is the killer's psychology. I mean, you know what I mean? And because you could have a person who's playing everybody.
Well, they don't even know the motive.
It depends, right? It depends on the person. So it's an interesting.
So how do you go into an interview with a quadruple homicide when you yourself, as the investigator, the lead investigator, are is already thinking, well, we don't know why he did this.
Well, this is where the point comes in. There's very little new under the sun when it comes to murderers of a certain, is that you have to understand the general psychology of a person who commits a certain kind of offense to start to understand. And that's where the person who's asking the question, well, how can you say all these things? You can only say, look, I can't have direct knowledge of what's going on inside of this person. So the best I'm going to get is to try to understand indirectly by the clues that they have given, statements they have made, and information that comes from similar people until this person talks. And these are the questions that remain unanswered. And these are all the possibilities. That is very different than saying, this is what, exactly why he did what he did and said what he said, and this is his diagnosis and whatever, without going in and talking to the person. There's a difference there.
Yeah,
but I think it was a good faith question. It's just that it's hard to tell sometimes.
And by the way, the guy copped out to why he stuck the gun in the guy's mouth. And also one other case I should bring to your attention, the Killer Sally on Netflix, the two weightlifters.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
I did the crime scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
She blew his jaws off.
Yeah, I remember that.
And by the way, he was still talking when the patrol guys got there.
Dear Lord. Now this I love Marvin the Martian. He always makes me think of my father.
He's flipping you off.
My father did an impersonation of him that was perfect.
He's giving you the bird.
Yeah, I used to love when my father was in a certain mood. He would start to talk in that moment, and then we used to crack me up. And so that gives me I think he's flipping the bird. Is that what you saying?
Sheila Hancock and Chris Sogene were the case agents on that. I did the scene. So to answer the one question of what do I know about crime scenes, I don't know. I've done over 500 of them.
Well,
I don't know a thing actually. I don't know anything about heart surgery either because I've never done one. That's true. I know nothing about heart surgery, but you throw a dead body with blood all around, I'm good to go.
A wise man once said something about a steak. I can't remember. Dr. Gary Brucato, do you think it's possible that BK used Bundy's MO when he got KG?
No, I KG, meaning Kaylee Goncalves, right? So look, I think that this is a person who was interested in the methods of a lot of offenders. As I say, I think thematically there was some kind of special. I strongly suspect a strong interest in Bundy, but we know that he was looking at a few different offenders and imitating and learning from and trying to improve upon in his mind. I don't know if it was this specific offender, but certainly I think he utilized a lot of techniques that he would have learned about in his study of crime. When Chris and Dean Jackson and Ann Burgess and Greg Cooper and I did the discussion of Kohberger before he was even caught, we all agreed, it was like one of the first things to roll out of our mouths, that this guy was some kind of student of the criminal mind, that he had clearly been studying crime. I mean, that to me was crystal clear from the get-go, because he used, there were indications of classic crime.
Are you feeling all right, Chris? I know that you're sick. And I really,
hey, do me a favor, put up Detroit. Put up Enduring.
Where's
what?
Let me see. Hold on.
You'll see.
Oh Lord.
It's a sarcastic comment. I'll qualify him here in a second.
I'm looking for it, but I
didn't even see it.
Just pull it down. He went up there.
You mean the person who says they love your work?
No. Yeah, keep going down. Well, let me see.
The one who says
Enduring, Enduring. Yeah, it's sarcastic, which is fine. I was going to ask him his pronoun.
All right.
That's all I want to know. What's your pronoun?
Okay, so Chris, but let me ask you honestly, do you agree that this guy was sort of mimicking things he learned? He was like sort of a hodgepodge of different things that he picked up from different offenders he was studying to try to do and he just didn't do it.
No, and I'm not upset with anybody, right? I'm just sick. Karen gave me this cold thing, so I'm just kind of running out of gas.
Yeah, no, and I need to speed it along.
Josh no, but I'm going to stay because I'm enjoying the company. Say that again, Gary, one more time?
I'm saying, do you agree that this is somebody who studied a lot of offenders and then was sort of trying to patch together a MO where he was using techniques that other offenders had employed? I mean, remember that in his thesis work or whatever, he was actually asking offenders about the phenomenology of committing crime. And so I think he really wanted to try to understand it and psychologically, but I think also as sort of like preparing, what am I going to feel? How do I go about doing this in the cleverest way? And so I think it was a whole bunch of people that he was sort of imitating. I mean, I see elements in what he did of 5 or 6 different offenders. And there are things that I suspect he did that we don't know about yet because other offenders did them.
Yeah, I agree. Bryan Kohberger's like trying on the clothes.
Yeah, like a farrago of different ideas. From
he may pick the socks of Rogers. He may pick the pants of Bundy. He may, but when he looks in the mirror, to your point earlier, right, Gary? When he looks in the mirror, he goes, "Oh wow, I look most like Ted."
I personally think so, but
So I'm going to start with Ted. He's going to. I think, and you and I have had many conversations about this behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I think had he not been caught, that he would evolve into a second persona. Meaning, he would have maybe now tried the persona of maybe whoever. Danny Rawlings, whatever.
He would have kept experimenting with the things that he. Yes, I think he was evolving. Yeah. Like people don't, and I think we, in the interest of time, we'll be brief here. But like people tend to not understand that offenders evolve. So especially when there's a lot of time. So for example, I remember I went on a program that at the time that there was some question about how victims could be linked in the Heuermann case if some were dismembered and some weren't, like as if a person's MO is always uniform. And I said, you're talking about decades, potentially. People evolve. They learn to eliminate evidence differently. And Heuermann, if he's guilty, is a good example of somebody that we know was in his own planning document, was reading other offenders' work and law enforcement ideas to try to perfect. They evolve and they develop a kind of a persona that sticks, that whatever the public opinion is shaped, but, and the next thing you know, you're Jack the Ripper, right? You're Zodiac, you're, BTK, you're whatever. You're the happy face killer. You eventually evolve into that kind of thing. But I think this was a fledgling. That's partly why I don't think this guy ever did it before. I think it was the first time, and he didn't do it, I think, too planned.
And I don't think he did it with anybody else.
No, I don't think. But I think he has what we know of offenders of who do things like this is that they generally commit serial offenses and perfect a psychosexual fantasy over time. Right. So, Josh, are there any more of the super chat questions? I feel guilty about not answering.
One says, I put that up because some twat kept saying there were 2 DNA.
Oh, well, there is.
I don't think that's a question.
Well, there's blood spatter on the knife sheath. Okay. And they determined that it's a mixture of both Maddie and Kaylee. And the third, it's unidentifiable because it's probably not sequentially ready, meaning there wasn't enough there. And let me give you a simple example. There's also DNA, unidentified male, on John Benet Ramsey. Why do people focus on the family when there's unidentified DNA on her? It's the same concept. Okay. Now, could it have come from somebody else? Of course. But in that case, they said, well, it must have come from the factory. So let's check all the Chinese people who made the underwear. Okay. And that's ludicrous. That went ludicrous speed right there. Okay. But you'll see in due time, there's going to be much more DNA coming out.
Yeah.
Mark my words on it.
And let's see, appreciate the education stories and victim advocacy.
Love you.
Oh,
Look.
this is another person who's been very kind and has been a fan of my music and I think may have sent me a very kind note.
XY blood, sir. Yep. Thanks. What's your pronoun? I still want to know your pronoun.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sorry.
That this it's so hilarious to see the total match between what's going on.
My pronoun is sir. That's correct. You got it correct.
Cat Randall says his is cat.
Josh, I love that
Detroit
this conversation is going on and people in the audience are like, Josh, your hair looks awesome. Like this hilarious kind of mismatch between but it does look good, by the way.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
When you showed that video earlier, I was looking at you there and I'm looking at you now. You look like two different people. Look, I'm getting hair compliments now.
I was a lot fatter back then.
You know what? That's fascinating. We are in a culture that is so I got to be careful.
Oh God.
No, I got to be careful because of you, Gary. I love you. You know, I don't want to say something.
You know that I'm super diplomatic. Seriously, I easily.
I know you are.
Yeah, it's like when they asked Susan Rice.
Yeah.
Remember her? They said, "Why did you get into that business?" She said, "When I was a kid, I was the arbitrator in my house."
Yeah, you're the peacekeeper. The
peacekeeper, right? Yeah.
Yeah, the peacemaker. Yeah, but at the same time,
the things people say.
I think we're in a highly hypersexualized society.
I don't think anybody is saying anything like that. I mean, are you kidding me?
Well,
people, no, they wouldn't come at me with a 10-foot pole.
Do you agree? Do you agree with that? Thank you, Julie.
No, I think they're just complimenting our hair.
Do you think we're in a highly sexualized society?
Oh, definitely, but I don't think.
Well, no, especially when people identify themselves through sexual orientation.
Oh, I think.
How do you think that plays out in criminality?
That's a question that I think would take it's an interesting question.
Well, that's why a detective would say when you sit down with somebody, how do you identify? What are you? Because before I can interview you, I mean, if you're a cat, okay, I got to figure out if I got to put a vet on standby, okay, to come into the interview room and evaluate whether or not you need some shots, okay, or if you're a furry, okay, like Tyler Robinson and his buddy, okay, as an investigator, you want to know these things before you go into it. And that's why I'm asking this guy, what's your pronoun? There's nothing disrespectful about it. I'm just curious, seeing how there's XY chromosome, apparently he knows the difference between XY and XX chromosomes. So I want to know what his pronoun is. It's logic. You see, if I had you in an interview room there, Detroit, I'd have you in 5 minutes, if not 4.
I don't think Detroit's here anymore.
Oh, he left? Oh, go figure. I'm very confident in saying that.
I think he got blocked.
Oh, you did? Don't block him. Let him.
I didn't do it.
Have his peace.
But
I love these guys.
But these people that are sending super chats, I think we've got them all, right? Because they're sending donations and everything, and I feel bad about, because sometimes people write to me and they're like, I waited a long time to have my question answered, and I feel kind of bad about it. And I also
we've answered all of them. We've answered all of them. I actually we've answered all of them, and I got to wrap it up anyway because I got to take the dogs out. So
I think that Kohberger has a way of bringing out people who are a lot like Kohberger, and you wind up with kind of beating them off like bats, with this using a logic stick. But I think that the truth is that if you're a scientist, it's good to get tough questions. I mean, whatever you're believing should withstand scrutiny, right? So I think in a way it's sort of fun when people. It's just that some of the questions I don't think are in good faith. That's really what I think. And Chris is like, there's no patience for it. I love that Chris has no patience for it because he just.
Well, it's just a handful of people, and they've been removed, so it's
yeah.
not.
But I think that but most of the questions are very, very valuable, and I think we had a very fruitful discussion. I personally, in the simplest way possible, everything that I'm seeing in these documents does nothing except further support the brutality that we anticipated really went on there, and the type of person that this would have had to have been to do this. And to me, all it does is exonerate and vindicate a viewpoint that we've had all along. It does not point to some guy, had a buddy that went in there and did this and had this alliance with and played this out for, it was some other guy that did this, who had a personal relationship with one of the victims, or no. And I think, to me, it's just watching it unfold. It's more and more clear the kind of person this is, and I am more and more grateful that he is in a cell somewhere. And I mean, Chris, what did you say? It's a good thing that this guy is now the bug in the jar.
Well, yeah, and the bug in the jar is driving all the bug keepers crazy.
Right.
In fact,
and he loves it. And
I just dropped some information the other day, went all over the place about.
And he loves it. He loves it. And,
well, they're trying to figure out if he doesn't. I don't think he knew about it, and I think the IDOC is a little upset that it got out. And I think initially I thought it was going to be about 30 days, but I think it will probably be a little bit longer, between 3 and 6 months, and then we'll see. They're going to try to figure out a way to get him out of Idaho. And by the way, for the record, Idaho has transferred well over a couple hundred prisoners through a pact agreement with the states of Texas, Arizona, and Colorado.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you do a Google search, you'll find out that yes, in fact, they do that. They move them all the time. They make agreements.
But I didn't know about that agreement.
Yeah. They're. I think right now there's over 10,000 inmates in the Idaho Department of Corrections, and they're only geared up for about 8,200 approximately. These are statistical numbers. Anybody can look them up. Again, maybe XY chromosome can do some math there. And the idea there is, what do we do with this guy? Because he's constant and they're short staffed. Okay. Well, my sources, as you know, Gary, they're solid. I get a ping the other day that says, "Hey, guess what he's doing now?" I said, "I can only imagine." He says, "Well, there's internal talk that they're going to move him." I said, "Really? Awesome. Where are they going to put him?" He goes, "I don't know yet." Okay, but they're gonna move him. Okay. Yeah. And by the way, this was and I dropped that information too. Remember? That was the same source that gave me that information. And everybody came at me kind of like the XY chromosome. They're like, "Hey, there's no way, he's not complaining." I mean, there was people saying stupid stuff. I was like, "Yeah, okay, well, we'll see." And lo and behold, boom, all of a sudden they FOIA'd all of the complaints. And guess what? He's complaining about bananas. Okay. And, that must have drove all those people bananas. But that said, my information is always on the mark. I don't put something out there unless I know it's one, reality, and two, it's true. Period. That's it. And, I don't deal in fantasy. And I know what my pronoun is. It's sir. SIR. You can call me sir. Okay. From that XY chromosome. He'll go home and sleep on that for a little while. And he's watching because he's probably blocked. If you said he's blocked.
I didn't know. Yeah, somebody blocked him, which is fine.
Okay, guess what? XY chromosome. I'm going to live in your head for the next month.
Oh, God.
Please come over to my channel so I can block you. Please. Because that's really going to bother you. I guarantee it. And when you're ready to tell me what your pronoun is, send me a DM. You can do that on Twitter. I just opened my Twitter account the other day, and I had somebody put up say, "Oh, you must know so much. You've got 49 followers." I said, "Yeah, I need 50. Keep going. Keep going. Keep coming."
Well, I feel almost as if I've been hit in the head with some kind of big like mallet or something. Like my head is swimming. I'm
yeah.
that,
Okay, well, try getting the cold.
although I kind of look like that all the time. What'd you say?
Get the cold. I got the cold. Karen gave me the cold.
Yeah, I think Chris is off some. Did you take some NyQuil?
That's so funny. I can't. But I like the honeycomb background, by the way.
Thank you.
You?
What's that? Yeah, I did that.
Yeah, I like it a lot. But I think it reminds me a little bit of I was talking earlier about how there's the Sherlock Holmes style and the Columbo style. A lot of people don't realize when Sherlock Holmes retired, he became a beekeeper.
I like that.
And I always think it's interesting to think about why he became a beekeeper.
Who did?
Sherlock Holmes.
All right, the show's over. Thank you guys so much.
Very funny, but but what do you think about this? Why he became a beekeeper? I'm just curious.
I don't know, dude. I don't know anything about Sherlock Holmes.
I think it means that after a life of trying to deal with unpredictable, horrible people, the most satisfying thing was to have a little world that was under his control, right? A whole bunch of little bees doing what they're supposed to do in the honeycomb, and that's it. Nice and simple, and life is quite literally sweet. And I think that's ultimately where we all want to wind up with this stuff, And I personally would. I want to go to the land of honeycombs right now and read.
Well, I want to give you an analogy about that, if we can, Josh, before you hang up.
Sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I love bees, by the way.
Yeah, the honeypot honeycomb principle has been around in law enforcement forever.
Yeah, tell us.
Well, this is how you used to dress up as women to get on the street and pretend that you had a handbag with you.
Oh, like Mr. Belvedere did in that one episode, yes.
Right. You're the decoy. Okay. And if you look at, there's an old picture. I'm gonna
there's an episode where Mr. Belvedere does that to try to catch a guy who's stealing women's shoes.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Hang on.
I love Mr. Belvedere. Talk about snark. Do you remember Mr. Belvedere, Josh?
Yeah, I do.
With the hilarious Christopher Hewitt plays the snotty. Funniest thing he ever said was there was this little witch kid that came to a party and she was talking to him condescendingly, like the guy worked for the queen, and she'd be like, do you have more ice for my drink? And what is this nonsense you're serving?
Yeah.
And he leans in and he pinches her dress, pulls it forward, and says, "Is this flammable?"
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I think that's hysterical. Anyway, so Chris.
So Josh, I'm going to send you a picture real fast. You got to put it up for the audience. They'll crack up.
Is this flammable?
Okay. To Gary's conversation about the beekeeper.
Yeah, beekeepers.
Okay.
That sound effect sounds like somebody slipping on a banana peel.
Okay, it's inbound.
Oh my God. Okay, I'll put it up.
You got that?
Oh, Joey's great. Josh, he always calls with great questions.
Joey's the man. Love him.
Yeah, I like his glasses.
And after I put this up, I used
this was 1960.
He used this term loosely.
Okay, it's LAPD robbery homicide, and they were having a series of robberies where women were getting robbed and killed, or some of them were getting shot. So they created this honeypot beat,
These are all guys dressed as women?
They were all decoys. Okay.
I mean, that is the most,
on boils.
I was going to say that those are horrible, horrible outfits.
Looks like everybody who would write to me on Hinge.
Right. This is 1960. Here's where I'm going with this.
Oh gosh.
You would think this was 2026.
Dear Lord. Just like
You would think, oh my gosh,
God, what a
we've
bunch.
springboarded forward to 2026. Okay. So
no, that
the
stop.
this was you know, the XY chromosome question, because these guys here actually had to pretend they were victims, and every one of these is a male that was in the robbery homicide detail 1960 LAPD. That's a real picture. It goes to show you how far our society has shifted, because this is where you were trying to catch real killers and real people that were doing harm to people on the street.
Looks like my gym teacher.
But what does it have? I'm trying to understand the connection to the idea of the beehive.
Well, the beehive is
The honeypot.
Yeah, the honeypot. The
Oh,
bees.
that's the link.
You go to the middle. You go to the middle and say, "Everybody, come on! All the bees, bring all your honey, bring it all in, and we'll build the the bees, the honeypot. We'll create it, and you guys can taste it. It's pure. It's awesome." Well, this is how it used to happen.
Sure, Lord.
Okay, and today, these poor guys, even in LA tonight, LAPD, there's a lot of riots going on up there. They actually attacked the federal building up there. Now I'm a law and order guy. That's just how I function. Okay, but we're having this problem trying to identify what that actually means in today's society, and it's a very dangerous situation. It's a very dangerous situation. And I'm going to cover it tomorrow because there's supposed to be more street action tomorrow about 2:00 in the afternoon.
Always on Saturdays too. It's more. Like
I'm
on
going
the
to go. I haven't talked to Karen yet, and depends on how I feel in the morning. But I think it's important. Okay, I think it's important for all of us to take a look at what we have, what we were, and what we've become.
Oh crap! Sorry.
Did you just drop him?
No, sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead.
No, I was born in 1959, so this was a year. I was 1 year old when this picture was taken. Right. So I don't know any of these guys, et cetera. But the principle is, okay, we've really lost our way.
You have to admit that looks like a fun room.
I would love to have worked with these.
This must have been hysterical.
I've done decoy programs. Obviously, working as a vice detective, I used to wear the wire all the time.
But you know these guys bust into the time warp.
Oh,
I mean,
this is
what
great
is going
stuff.
on with this? You know, I mean, this is hilarious. But just out of curiosity, did they catch anyone?
Oh yeah, they caught the series. Yeah, in fact, I had a series one time where a guy, every time he did a robbery, he would take a dump, and he called him the crapper. Okay? And he did 22 robberies, and every time he did a robbery, he either crapped in the store or outside of the store. And
That's
we
great.
nailed him on this DNA in the poop. We called him the crapper.
That was asked to collect that evidence.
Well, we had to do we were doing surveillances all for many nights, and I ended up catching him. John Lamb will tell you, because I went to John and I said, John, I need to get out there on this crapper guy.
I love John Lamb.
Yeah,
I love John
awesome.
Lamb because
John
he is
approved
one of those people that you could not make up if he didn't exist. He is an unbelievable character.
He's fantastic.
I love his personality. He is so funny.
He's got a new book coming out.
Brilliant.
He's got a new book. It's called Bring Out Your Dead.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
I love it.
He's almost done with it. He's wrapping it up, and he's got some funny stories in there.
And
but
a noble person, Chris.
He's a good man.
Good man, yeah, who really
Great
loves
man.
life and a really lovely man. But in all seriousness, this has been an absolute trip. I mean, I don't wait. Let me see what this is. The person is saying they wanted to get a book plate from. Oh, okay.
Kimbo,
I sign
yeah,
a lot of
Kimbo.
these things. You know, people are they a lot of people ask me to sign all kinds of things
Enjoy,
they sent to my
Thank
office,
you.
which are very funny. Josh, get on the case of the crapper, okay?
That's
That's
right.
it.
And all right, so I think it was an interesting conversation. I actually have not seen any of the Blum interviews or any of the. I haven't heard any of it. People are talking about it. You know, I'm gonna
Call of Duty.
Call of Duty.
Yeah,
Look,
duty.
hey, I don't know. He went off the rails today
Howdy doody time.
on
Yeah.
Megyn Kelly saying there's a potential killer out there.
Like a
And
second killer.
He's
the
saying
second
there's a
killer
second
theory.
killer.
Well, it's I mean,
You know,
listen, it's an opinion.
Yeah, bad one.
Based on what?
It's based on what the defense was going to do during trial.
You're right, but you don't tell the public. You have an obligation to be professional and say, look, Bryan Kohberger has not said there's a second killer. You know what Bryan Kohberger did when he had handcuffs put on him? Did you arrest anybody else? Nobody has asked Bryan Kohberger, did you mean your mother? Did you mean your father? Did you mean your sister? Did you mean anybody in Pennsylvania where you were arrested? Or were you talking about this phantom second guy that later on, after you say, I did it, okay, he's still out there? And let's scare the hell out of the college students at the same time at the University of Idaho that now may be thinking, holy crap, Megyn Kelly just put out there on 4-point-something million people, okay, that this guy says there could be a second guy out there. Because that was going to be the whodunit, sod, some other dude, defense from Ann Taylor, who also, by the way, said, Your Honor, we know he didn't do it. 1,000,000%. There is no way our client, in fact, Your Honor, I'm going to tell the world, which she shouldn't have done because that was unethical, that I guarantee you he didn't do it. Mr. Kohberger, did you kill Maddie? Yes. Did you kill Kaylee? Yes. Did you kill Ethan? Yes. Did you kill Xana? Yes. Miss, did your attorney in any way, shape, or form influence you? In any way, shape, or form, give you a promise? Give you any kind of favors? Give you anything for you to plead guilty today? No.
They were the ones that asked.
Miss Taylor, anything else you want to say other than you said to the world, this guy didn't do it? Anything else? And now you have people chiming in and saying, well, you know what? There could be another guy out there still killing college students. Really? Well, he hasn't killed anybody in 4 years. I mean, just knock it off. That's unprofessional.
I haven't seen any of it. Where is this on Megyn Kelly? You said?
On Megyn Kelly's show, yeah.
Yeah, I listened to it today.
I haven't
I
listened to it yet,
I
but
don't
Not
know.
Megan's fault.
Look, the problem I have with a lot of this stuff, and I don't mean any particular individual doing it, but the problem I have with it is that it seems like an effort to prolong a story that is adjudicated, right? To
Thank
keep
you.
the press going and keep the machinery pumping out, you know, whatever. What about this? What about that? But the reality is, like, he is done. He admitted it. You know, he said yes, that is to say, took a deal and is rotting in a jail. And he has managed to pull the strings to have everybody still talking about him. You know, I heard.
And Simca says, and I wonder why I don't get invited to CrimeCon. Yeah, because I have a soul and I won't sell it to the devil. Ever. And I won't sell it on behalf of the victims. Ever. Ever.
Well, you know, I heard somebody say once about another person, and I won't say who said it or who they were talking about, but I heard them talking about a person who they were saying had a kind of narcissistic quality that you have to think of some people like a Dr. Seuss character that every time someone is talking about them, just like inflates a little bit, right? People talking about them in the school, in the bar, in the street, and whatever, and they just go. And Kohberger got a little of that going on. With all of us kind of talking about him, he just gets bigger and bigger. But it's almost better to stop and just let him go, you know. And, you know, I think from a scientific perspective, unfortunately, he has to be discussed in these kind of general terms of where he falls and why, you know, why he might have done it with an eye toward prevention. But he, as a person, is about as interesting as corrugated cardboard. I mean, there is a reason that people did not want to be around this person. I mean, he's a humorless, cadaverous kind of a person, mantis-like, I think would be the way I would describe him.
He's a relentless loser.
Yeah. Well, look, you know, I had somebody write me a scathing message the other day saying that it was wrong to call killers losers.
Oh,
You know, because I was implying that it wasn't possible for them to be redeemed, that they could go through spiritual redemption. I think the point is, from a spiritual perspective, you know
why they can't?
Evil is losing. I mean, that's the whole point.
Let's talk about spiritual redemption.
Yeah. And then we need to jump over 2 a.m. here almost.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you think God says, thou shalt not kill? By the way, he doesn't say thou shalt not kill. He says thou shalt not murder.
He could say whatever he wants. He's God. He could say, put on this funny hat. And we should
but why does he tell man that?
Because it's not their place to be the arbiter of life or death.
Okay. And he is the fulfiller of all redemption, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed.
So what are the prerequisites for redemption in terms of repentance?
I don't know.
Well, first of all, you have to confess.
Sorry for what you did. Repenting.
You have to confess. And then what else do you have to do? What's the second part?
You have to ask for redemption from
And what? Change your ways?
God, and then change. Not do it again.
Okay. Well,
and then try to fill the void of the damage you've done.
Right. Restitution, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you restore life?
No.
So how can you be forgiven for death?
It's a great point.
If you can't fulfill the requirements of repentance, how can a murderer be forgiven for taking a life? If part of repentance is to restore all things to their proper order. Now, this is why it's very difficult for people to understand or wrap their mind around the concept of, how this in totality works. Okay. And this is why when the Savior says in the parable of the 10 virgins, I knew you not. You draw near to me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me. Okay. Go. This is why he gives that parable of 5 wise, 5 foolish. And they're all saints, meaning they all follow him. But 5 are wise and 5 are foolish, because you can't go at midnight and get oil for your lamps, i.e., what you've been doing in your life. And part of that is the repentance process. And when you asked that question, Gary, recently about when Pilate asked him, what is truth?
Yeah, that stuck with you, huh?
Well, no, because it did. It stuck with me. But what really stuck with me is when he says, whom dost thou say that I am? He qualified Pilate. I've often asked myself, could I have put handcuffs on Jesus Christ? Being in his presence. You see, that's an interesting dynamic. Many people say, well, we'll drop to the floor when Christ comes through the door. Well, you first of all have to answer that question. Whom do you say that I am? And when people, all of us, okay, get into this religious dilemma, okay, I've always felt that with people who have killed somebody, that it's not my place in any way, shape, or form to tell them why they did it. It's always been my place to be a listening piece to tell God why they did it. And it goes back to that earlier question with Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger comes from a very religious family. We all know that now. We all knew it then. I would not have approached him to talk about baseball. I would have approached him, and I would still approach him to this day, about Bryan Kohberger being a human being who wore the mask of this brutality. And then I would ask him, can you restore life? If the answer is no, Bryan, I would like to understand you a little bit more.
But remember, Chris, that the man that brought the tablet down from the mountain that said that thou shalt not kill on it, killed someone.
Yeah, he killed the Egyptian.
That's right. Moses killed someone. So, and I think one of the marvels of our faith is that redemption, when can come when your heart authentically.
But it's not about the heart, or Cain would have been forgiven as well.
No, it's not as simple as that. Is the point? Right. There's the other side of it. Right.
If you steal, you got to give it back.
Right. The restitution.
It's that simple. And if you steal a life, wouldn't you think you have to give it back? And that's why the Lord says one of the two things, right? Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Mm-hmm. And he goes down this whole list. Okay, they're not suggestions.
Yeah.
Okay, they're not suggestions. They're not things that people we can kind of go through and say, oh, I'll just kind of put this one over here. Okay, from a philosophy aspect. Okay, but yeah, I love that mutt. He's so cool, and he looks just like Josh. Same haircut, everything. Okay,
Lord.
But I think we're in a place now where that, again, we go back to this idea that says, well, that we're not supposed to call people losers. We're not supposed to do that. We're not supposed to do that. Okay, well, there's the other side of that coin too. When Christ knocked the tables over at the temple, he turned to him and he says, thou hypocrites. He called them hypocrites, which were the ultimate losers. He says, I wish you were either hot or cold so I could spew you out of my mouth. Don't be in the middle. Be one or the other.
I know. I'll tell you, just as a final point, that one of the great sadnesses for me in life is envisioning the day when I meet my Maker, when I meet Christ at the judgment, and thinking about all the times that I encountered him in the poor, in a spiritual sense, in the Eucharist, especially in the Word, etc., and ignored him or passed him up or didn't welcome him or feed him or give him something to drink or so forth. And when I think about it that way, it breaks my heart. It really does, because what I've tried to achieve in my life is not the kind of a sense of sin where it's I did this and someone's writing it down in a notebook, that I have this point against me, but as a relationship where I authentically feel sad that I've hurt someone who's done nothing but love me
No, I get it.
wretchedly, lived, and I think to see it that way is very, very important, and I think sometimes I have talked to a lot of offenders that have had conversion experiences and so forth, and sometimes it feels sort of fake. Sometimes it's a psychological thing where they've sort of made their mind up that they're forgiven and whatever, but there's no real heart level kind of desire to change or whatever. And then there's sometimes there have been people who have shocked me that have had this kind of Paul moment where they feel like they're sort of knocked off the horse and they go like, what was I thinking? And I notice it varies according to the offender.
Well,
I don't
let me ask you a question.
serial killers, for example, that
You
have
know
had
the story. You know the story of the interview.
I think I know what you're about to say.
Where everybody's died and they're sitting in the interview room.
Oh, yeah. Right.
And the door opens next, and the guy walks in, and he goes and he sits down, and the interviewer says, "So tell me what you know about religion and Jesus Christ, and how many people did you forgive throughout your life?" "Oh, well, Jesus, I mean, he died for my sins. I forgave everybody that I ever ran into. And what else do you know?" And he says, "Well, and all this other stuff, I loved everybody when they were doing stupid stuff. And, I looked past all the stupid stuff and I only fell into the love." He says, "That's wonderful." He says, "Well, it sounds like you've really developed spiritually. Can you get the next guy, please?" And he goes out and says, "You're next." And then that guy gets to the threshold and drops down and says, "My Lord, my God." That's the power of understanding. It is not the power of being just a good person. Because there were many good people that did not go in with Jesus Christ, with Pilate, but one went in with him. It's in the scriptures. One went in, because it takes two or more witnesses, where the Lord says, "Where two or more are gathered, so am I." And that second person, the other disciple, it says in the scriptures, went in with Christ, and Peter waited outside of the door. Peter was a good person. He forgave everybody, and he did all the things. But Peter got a conversation with Christ just before he denied him. And what was the first question? It says, "Peter, thou lovest me more than these?" He says, "Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I lovest thee." He said, "Feed my lambs." Then he asked him a second time, "Peter, lovest thou me more than these?" "Yea, Lord, thou knowest that I lovest thee more than these. Feed my sheep." Then he asked him a third time, the same question. And the response was, "Feed my sheep." So does that mean,
to balance out the three denials?
well, do lambs recognize the master? What Christ was teaching him, there was spiritual development that he continued to have to go through.
Right.
And when he became the sheep, or the master of the sheep, Christ, those who have ears will hear. And the sheep all recognize the master's voice. They all do, even to this day in the Middle East. If you've never been to Israel, okay, and for the record, for my friends out there, my wife is a Messianic Jew. She's 100% Ashkenazi Jew who converted to Christianity. She's a Zionist. And in today's society, because my wife is a Jew, I would probably be killed alongside her just because I married her. Now, I can be good and be the type of person that I am and have all the judgment and the chat and all that other stuff, but I don't care, because I stand before one. I stand before my maker. And what a lot of people don't know, okay, is I have a degree in religion. I have a minor in religion. Okay. That's how I know these things. And that was also part of the drive that got me into law enforcement. Okay. Because I've told everybody, I made a deal with God, and he has fulfilled his promises to me, and he continues to do it on a daily basis. And when my supervisor, they used to call me Father McDonough. That was my nickname, because people would want to talk to me. They still do. I don't know why. Maybe because I'm a straight shooter. I tell it the way it is, and I'm not intimidated by things, because I don't have to be, because it's not about me. He's much bigger than I'll ever be. Okay? And if we look over here, well, you can't see it on the new thing, but if we look here, he's my focus in my world, in my life. Okay? And when people say, well, I wonder why I'll never talk at CrimeCon, he hasn't made the decision yet. And when he does, I'll be there. I'm not worried about it. He is my focus in my whole life. My wife, my children, but my Lord comes first. And then my wife, and then my children, then my work, in that sequence. And as a result of that, my channel started with 0. And it's growing day by day, moment by moment. But you notice one thing I never do on my channel? I never ask anybody for money. Not once. I ask them to subscribe because I don't need their money. If you want to give money, give it to him. Pay your tithing. That's who needs the money. Give it to that guy who's laying on the street, even though he's a fentanyl heroin addict. Give him $1. Because those are the kind of things that you do in secret will come back tenfold upon you. Those are the things. If you're worried about what's happening in the world, walk across the street and knit a blanket with your neighbor. Don't try to solve the problems of the world. And know your pronouns. It's that simple. Because when the Lord does ask you, whom do you say that I am? And you give him, well, thou art the Lord Jesus Christ. He's going to say, and who are you, my son, my daughter? Who art thou? Yea, Lord. You knew me not. You draw near me with your lips, but your hearts are far from me.
Yeah. Amen.
I didn't make that up. There's a scriptorial document that says that. And guess what? He told the apostles, when you see that, don't make excuses for it. Because I won't, he says. The book of life will be open. And it will be read. And we will be judged accordingly. And I'm sure I'm going to get thrown under so many buses, I don't even know how to think yet.
I'm not sure. I think, Chris, that you're speaking your heart and you feel that the truth is something that simply is what it is, and that you're saying it in an environment in which people will judge you for it. But remember that you were told to sing and dance when people do that. So,
well, I go back to what the Lord says. To your What is truth? Well, what is truth?
It's the question of the year.
But the second question, but the follow-up to that was, whom does thou say that I am?
Right.
He asked the question.
Right.
And Pilate couldn't answer it. Art thou a king then? He says, unto such was I born.
Look who it is, Chris.
Well,
Hey.
I don't know.
You guys, I gotta wrap it up. I gotta get going. I got the dogs going crazy on me here. He's if he pees on my floor, I'm holding Dr. Gary personally.
That's a great woman right there.
She really is.
I don't know. Who is it?
It's Brandy Neal, Michael Vaughn's mother.
Oh,
Excuse me.
oh.
He's married. They got
That's
married.
another story.
So.
Oh yes, I've certainly heard.
Yes.
Yes.
So anyway, guys, thank you so much. We've been here 3.5 hours. I told Chris we were going to do an hour and a half. You know, that never works for us, which is fine. The people love it. So anything going out, you guys?
I just think we should dedicate the show to the victims of the Idaho murders.
Continue to be kind to each other.
And be kind to each other. Right. And I think even if you don't, as some people, if you don't agree with someone is saying, respect it.
Yeah, but
they have the right to say it. You know, I think what I love is when Chris is talking and people will say, now, Gary, don't say something to contradict, like as if I don't, like as if I'm not a Christian myself. So I get a kick out of that, like I'm like the chopped liver, you know.
I'll tell you what. Let me just
more private about it, but that's so funny.
And then we get
there like, are you kidding me? You know,
I want to say this really quick.
Right.
What I don't like is people in the chat insulting my guests. It pisses me off to no end, to be honest. And if you don't have anything nice to say, then don't say anything. From now on, it's just a block. I got no tolerance for that shit.
I haven't heard too many juicy insults of it. They're sort of humdrum.
They're there, and they're annoying. And I'm gonna get some mods who I'm just done with it. I'm done with. We can't have a conversation, and people can't have their opinion without somebody getting all pissy and going, "Get the show back where." Blah, blah. This is the show. This is what it is. If you don't like it, then don't listen. It is what it is, guys. And you know, it's just not. It's enough.
But they're not. What I'm saying is they're sort of goofy insults. I mean, you know.
But they're insults nonetheless. These are my guests, and you know, you can insult me. It's fine. I got no problem with it. But
you want to hear my favorite one I got? My favorite one I recently got was, remember we did the show, we were talking about Mangione? About Luigi Mangione. Okay. So I got an email from somebody that said something to the effect of, you only say these things about Mangione because you're jealous of his beautiful, what was it? Brows and hair, or something like that. So in other words, that's the only reason that we say anything negative about somebody accused of murdering a healthcare, a CEO. It's that I look in the mirror and go, man, do I wish I had that sort of, Bobby Rydell, hairdo. I mean, this stuff is just amazing to me. And by the way, I kind of got a Bobby Rydell hairdo going on anyway. But I just think that that's a funny thing, but so insults tend to be dumb. You know what I mean? I like an intelligent insult, but these are stupid.
Can I read something real fast?
Yeah, and then we definitely got to go.
He who is devoid of wisdom despises his neighbor, but a man of understanding holds his peace. A talebearer reveals secrets, but he who is a faithful spirit conceals a matter. Where there is no counsel, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, there are safeties. That is Proverbs 11, 12 through 14. That's what chats are all about. If people can't be counseled, and one of the biggest things, remember when I had Jigsaw John ask me one question, he says, are you teachable? He was a counselor. And he says, the Lord says, when there is no counsel, the people fall. But in the multitude of counselors, this group and others, there is safety. That's a great way to look that one up. It's Proverbs 11:12 through 14. I think you may find strength in it. If we look at Brandy, Michael's mom, she's a warrior. She's not only a warrior for her son, she's a warrior that shows us how to be dignified at the lowest moment in life. And how to bounce back and be resilient. And by the way, the journey's only begun for her because she still has a trial that she's going through. But she pops in on all these chats and she says, how are you guys? Not necessarily us, but how are you, her friends in the chat? Imagine that. She's concerned about your life.
Yes, she is.
That's amazing. And
yeah, I've heard wonderful things. I hope one day you have her as a guest and we can talk to her.
yeah, we've had Brandy on, and we
A few times.
I don't want to say something that would compromise the upcoming trial. So
I'm the one that introduced you.
yeah, you are. Josh is the one that introduced me to Brandy, and so I'm really, and she knows because I've told her, both her and Tyler, that look, I've got to be real careful because I was involved in some of the things, behind the scenes, and so I don't want to say something in the public and then get in trouble later on if I ever have to testify down the stream.
Yes.
So, and she understands that, and she knows I love her as well as her family, and that her little Bug, she has a little girl she calls Bug.
Yeah.
There she is. So,
all right, guys, I got it. And I appreciate
show a picture of Maduro.
Where? Oh God, it's in my email now.
Oh, sorry. Never mind. Never mind.
It was good though.
I
I sent it to Gary.
I sent it to him too.
Oh, okay, good deal.
This show reminds me of that scene in, remember that movie, The Birdcage, with Nathan Lane and Robin Williams? Remember that movie?
Yes. Why would you bring up a game movie?
Well, it's a hilarious movie. And there's a line where Robin Williams is downing alcohol, which is supposed to be used for cooking. And he says, it's like watching a psychotic horse running toward a burning stable. That's kind of how I feel watching the juggling act of topics that we went through tonight. And yet it came together beautifully. And the final analysis, it turned into this. What I love about the arc of our conversations is that they go from talking about the worst in humanity to this elevated kind of spiritual conversation. And it happens with our call-ins, and it happens. And I think it's very heartening to people because it reminds everybody that ultimately, it reminds everybody who's really got everything in hand.
Yeah.
Right. These petty control freaks lose. And in the end, yeah. So I think that's beautiful. And it's a good way to sort of think about the show, that it had that arc of coming out to, and that's the way it should be. So, and it is a funny movie.
Got it. Go.
Take care.
Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And thank you guys so much for being here. I appreciate it. I had a great time. Otis is over here growling his butt off. He's pissed, or he's going to piss. But I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for everything. Thank you to my wonderful guests. The chat, has 99% of the chat has been fine. And some of them, people just, they want to make their presence known. And I don't know. It's just too much sometimes. And if you don't like the show, you don't, whatever, that's fine. I don't care about that. But, it's kind of my house, I wouldn't allow people to be rude to guests in my home. Anyway, I appreciate you guys because you guys are awesome. And thank you, mods. And we will see you next time. Okay, I heard you, buddy. It's fine. All right.
you.